So welcome everyone to the April 3rd, 2023 meeting of the Richmond, Vermont Select Board. I'm trying to bring the agenda up on my own computer. Okay. Before we jump into anything new, does any member of the public have any comment on anything not on the agenda? Okay, Mary, could you come up?
Just in case you didn't know who it was.
I could picture you in this building.
Yes, Mr. Cochran. Hi there, Mary Hole. Lucky you. I just wanted to let you all folks, you probably all noticed already, the bulbs that I planted are coming up in good shape. I spent 3 hours Saturday raking out all the flower beds out front, cutting everything down. It met with Pete Goslin's approval. I also cut everything back on this side, moved everything away. I took away 5 garbage bags of raking. And then the only thing I have yet to do is bring the flower pots out. But since it's raining now, I should have done it so that they would have gotten watered. Okay, see you. Thanks. Bye.
And thank you for the weather Saturday, Mary. That was beautiful.
Well, you're very welcome.
Okay, on another introductory item, our new town planning and zoning administrator, Keith Oborn, is with us. And some of you know him from his previous service with the town. Some of you may not. So I'd just like to welcome Keith. Keith, if you'd like to say a few words.
Nope, just a few words. Happy to have returned and really appreciate the opportunity and thank you.
And we are glad to have you. It's nice to be filling the staff back out.
Absolutely.
Okay. Are there any other public comments while we are seeing none from online or in person? Okay. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? We're seeing none. Let's go ahead with our first agenda item tonight. We had promised that we would put the discussion of the sidewalk projects first on the agenda so that people would not have to wait well into the meeting before hearing about them. We have Chris or Kathleen.
Chris.
Oh, you're up there, Chris. I'm so sorry. Chris, if you would like to go ahead and do your presentation, we would love to hear it.
Great. Let me just figure out. Can you undisable the participant screen sharing?
We're good.
All right, I'll try it. Oh boy. Well, let me see. I don't think. All right, now that can you see anything? No. Show all windows. Here we go. Share.
Okay, good. It's sharing now. We can see you.
Okay. So this is just a really quick presentation on Bridge Street projects, of which there were 2. One is the Bridge Street Complete Streets, and that was the first project we completed. It was a complete streets study funded by the CCRPC with a local match by the town of Richmond. And then the second project was 3 projects. It was a sidewalk on East Bridge Street. It was Jericho Road sidewalk, and it was also an intersection analysis at Thompson Bridge Street and Cochran Rd. And we will be talking about the second one of those planning studies, which was just the sidewalk project from Jolina Court to Esplanade. This is the screen changing? There we go. This is the one we're not going to be talking about, but this shows you on the complete streets corridor study recommended a sidewalk along this alignment, linking both sidewalks when they would both eventually be built, if they're both eventually built. This is the sidewalk we're going to be, I believe, discussing. But both of these projects, both of these planning projects, had 2 public hearings, 2 meetings for the public for both of them, the Bridge Street as well as this sidewalk scoping report. And there is the path of this sidewalk. Public outreach for the first project was December 10th, 2020 and April 8th, 2021. And for the sidewalk scoping study, there were 2 public sessions. announced via flyers, Front Porch Forum, November 2nd, 2021, and March 17th, 2022. The FY22 sidewalk scoping study, the Stantec final report, they were the consultants on the project. And this is the alternative one, was what the Transportation Committee recommended to the Select Board. This is and this was after we had gotten input in from Pete Goslin, who really recommended the 5-foot green strip because it allows for loading of snow in the wintertime. The sidewalk on the west side of Bridge Street doesn't have the same green strip, and from conversations with Pete, that it can be challenging at sometimes on big snowfalls to find a place to put all that snow. So we went with the 5-foot, and it's important to know that unless conditions require a narrow green strip, and we recognize both in discussions with the consultants that there would need to be enhanced protection at the cemetery and for the mature maple trees, both of which we do not want to disturb with this project. And so, our recommendation to the Select Board was, as they're doing the final design, take the engineers' concerns regarding the cemetery and the trees into account, and have the flexibility to provide for less than a 5-foot green space. This slide shows a side view of the sidewalk and the grade, the buffer, the existing roadway, and approximately where it would go. You can see there would be a new crosswalk going across to make the sidewalk at Esplanade. We do not carry the sidewalk further because it goes into the bridge at that point, and there will not be another sidewalk on the other side of the bridge. So it made sense to funnel all pedestrian traffic who did want to go to the round church to cross the street at this particular juncture. These were the Select Board actions. The Transportation Committee is only an advisory committee. We only recommend. We presented the Bridge Street Corridor Study, and VHB, the consultant team, presented the final report to the Select Board on June 21, 2021, and the Select Board unanimously accepted the report during that meeting. We do not have any recommendations for funding to the state. We have not submitted an application, grant application for this particular project, but we have recommended to the town from just the Transportation Committee's perspective that this could be an ARPA project. New sidewalk on the east side of Bridge Street, June 6, 2022, Select Board meeting. Stantec presented their final report to the Select Board. The Select Board approved the report. The application was presented for a VTrans sidewalk construction grant. Now, this was to do both of the sidewalks, the one from the first study, the complete street study, and the second one from the sidewalk study. So it was Main Street all the way down the east side of Bridge Street to Esplanade. Select Board approved that grant application, and the town match for that complete sidewalk was $115,400. This application did not receive funding from VTrans. Apologies for moving my mouse. November 7th, 2022, Select Board meeting. The Transportation Alternatives Program, that's what TAP stands for, grant application. We divided the 2 sidewalks into 2 separate projects, thought that might have a better chance at the state. We provided that project to the Select Board. Select Board unanimously approved the submittal of the TAP application, town match of $65,000. And the last bullet point says we're waiting to learn if that application is approved, but I do understand from the town manager, Josh, that the application has been approved and the town has been awarded the funds. And then the last slide is considerations for a new sidewalk on East Bridge Street. Need for a sidewalk in this segment has been identified as early as 2010 in various documents in the town. East side of Bridge Street has 3 public buildings. It's got the town library, the town hall, and a post office. And there are folks who live on the east side of Bridge Street, whether it's East Main Street or in the neighborhoods behind, that have to cross Bridge Street twice. Once at the top where the sidewalk ends, where there's safety from a crosswalk, and then once across from the town hall. So rather than just be able to walk down a sidewalk on the east side of the street from east side of Main Street or from the businesses located on the East Bridge Street, you do have to cross the street twice to get to those public buildings. There is recognition in the grant application for the project that care in the segment adjacent to the cemetery to be designed during design and construction, whether or not that results in a knee wall as a retaining wall, or whether or not we eliminate the green strip in that section. But there's a lot of flexibility in that area. But I do understand from communications from the cemetery committee that there were headstones removed in that area next to Jolina Court, and nobody really knows whether there were unmarked graves. There were apparently pauper graves in that area, but there would have to be, as part of the project, in non-invasive reviewing of what lies under there. And then there are specific procedures for place for any work using state or federal funding that impacts any cultural artifacts or graves. And there's an archaeological review that would have to be undertaken as part of the project to ensure that whatever was under the sidewalk could be noted, not necessarily removed, but noted and documented. And that is my presentation.
Okay, Chris, thank you very much. I'd like to start with the select board. Do any members of the select board have any questions, comments, concerns, anything for Chris? Jeff?
Chris, in addition to the public hearings that you talked about specific to this project was also included in the bike and pedestrian plan, was it not? That big
Yes.
60 document?
I believe it was, yes.
And there were hearings on that as well, right? I know that we had at least 2 here, a draft at the select board level. We had at least 2 hearings relative to the entire bike and pedestrian plan.
Yes, in addition, we would have discussed it at those meetings, but the ramp up for our committee, in discussing this, we discussed these projects for 6 months to a year at pretty much every meeting. As we were advancing the projects, talking with consultants, we would review documents. So there was plenty of opportunity for folks to join one of our meetings or participate in the public hearings, which were indicated, advertised on Front Porch Forum and elsewhere to get the word out for people to attend or at least review the projects online.
You also brought this to the ARPA committee as well. This is the top project that you were requesting money to the ARPA committee.
That is correct. And I appeared before the ARPA committee twice, at least 2 times, talking about these projects. One was the introductory, and the second one was providing additional fiscal information on both sidewalk projects.
Okay, and I'd just like to add, as chair of the ARPA committee, people will very inevitably ask, why would we be spending ARPA money on this? This is transportation and safety improvements are one of the stated potential uses for the ARPA money. And when we did the survey of town residents on how they would like to see the ARPA money spent, there were a very, very large number of comments from people who would like to see pedestrian and bicycle safety improvements, including new sidewalks. So this would seem to be an appropriate use of some, but not all of the ARPA money. Does anybody else have any questions or comments before we move to the public? Okay, moving to the public, would anybody in person or coming in remotely like to ask any questions or make any statements about the sidewalk project? Morgan,
They need to come up with.
Yeah, I think.
if you would.
Question and a comment. First question is, I missed why we're not considering both sidewalks? Or we are,
The sidewalk on the north porch. portion is
yeah, the
on
north
sidewalk.
portion from,
We,
Going to street you're talking about? The,
are we considering both of them or just the one that Chris just covered?
Chris, during your presentation, you said, we're not covering this, we're covering this. And I think
well,
Morgan is-
sure, he can talk about either sidewalk. I was referring to funding.
Okay, so we don't have funding to, right now, we don't have funding to do both sections. That's why there's the focus on the one, okay. Well, just my comment is that any additional sidewalks will help with safety as Chris and others have pointed out. And I think one of the big safety issues, I live on Tilden Avenue and walk to the post office, walk down to the church, to the park with her dog. And coming past the Cumbies there is, can be a safety hazard at times if you're not watching. Watch the little kids come through there with their bikes. I'd sent a couple of photos, I think, to your email there just to look, but it would seem like it would make sense as if individuals from West Main could cross over Jericho Road and then cross again and just come down that sidewalk all the way down to the town center here. And I say that because that is the safest, those stoplights are the safest place to cross Bridge Street or West Main. I think somebody was fatally hurt here some years ago out here. I know I've tried to cross here, especially when you have low light, and even when you press the flashing lights, people blow right by you there, whether they're looking at their phone or they're just not focused. So it's from a safety standpoint, it would seem that putting that that sidewalk in makes great sense. It also significantly increases the walkability of, and there's people they're having to walk out in the street. I mean, the Cumbia is there. We need to adapt to it is there, but it is and I was trying to actually cross this way, turn and took a photo of it. And the poor 18-wheeler guys got to wait for the cars parked over there so that they can come in and unload the inventory to the Cumbia there. But I came around the truck thinking I had the right of way. Car was coming around here and they had to stop in the middle of the drive or the main street there and wave me on. I mean, it's good for them for watching, but I have other people that have just flown right by me. I've had people blow their horn at me because I was crossing the street, even though I had the right of way. So crossing over and going down is a safety, but walkability of the town. We're going to pass bills to increase the density of the town. People walk up and down sidewalks, I would think, ride their bikes, little kids. So again, having a sidewalk down that side improves the safety and walkability of the town. Thank you.
thank you.
Alan?
I want to agree with the prior comments. I also want to add that the crossing.
Yeah, Alan, if you could just say who you are.
Oh, I'm sorry. Alan Knowles, 112 East Main Street. The crossing at Railroad Street on the west side is also very difficult. And particularly for people who don't have good eyesight, good hearing, and aren't young and nimble. And this would provide a much safer option for that as well. Also, if people walking dogs and Volunteers Green and heading back to the village had an option in the summer besides traversing the tables where people are trying to eat that are set out, that would be advantageous. Also for children who are riding bicycles on sidewalks, not having to try to zip through those tables.
Okay. I just like to, as somebody, this is me as a pedestrian speaking out of the select board chair. As I said a couple of meetings back, I do a lot of walking, and I completely agree about the safety going from the intersection of Bridge and Main to the town center and beyond. It is very hazardous crossing the open area at the Cumbies, and if people can cross over to Greensea and go directly from Greensea all the way to the town center, that's substantially safer. Right now, I've been told by numerous people that they just stay home and don't go out because they don't want to risk the traffic. You know, elderly people who would like to go to the town center library and don't feel they have a safe option for getting there. Any other comments from either? We do have a comment from Betsy Hardy in the chat that I just like to read. She wants to express her strong support for the sidewalk on the east side of Bridge Street. She lives on Jericho Road near the schools and frequently walks to the post office, library, and town center. The east side sidewalks will greatly improve safety. Thanks, Betsy. Christy.
Hi, thank you. This is Christy Witters, and I've participated in the scoping studies over the years, and I'm a resident in the village and walk around a lot. And, I've had mixed feelings about two sidewalks, over the years. And I think, coming from the north side of Richmond and crossing, I've always, held my kids' hands as we walked by Cumbies and, taught them to look out for cars and all of that. And now they're old enough where they definitely will not hold my hands anymore and are independent and skateboarding and biking around. And I just wanted to echo the comments that I've heard voiced here before tonight, that I do support this sidewalk. I am excited to get a sidewalk in front of the library and the town center. And hopefully with this project, we can look forward to maybe get a grant to make it a complete sidewalk. Because I think this would be a good first step in that. So thank you.
Thank you, Christy. Kara?
Just a question for Chris in his presentation to make sure I understood it correctly. When he said, if you find something, it can be left in the ground and noted and covered with the sidewalks. Are you referring to, because you were talking about in the cemetery area, are you talking about if there are remains in the ground that we could cover it with a sidewalk?
I was talking about I'm sorry, I had my mute on. I was talking about any other artifacts that are over 50 years old. With bodies, there's special consideration and they have to follow whatever the state regulations are for that. And I'm not intimately aware of those.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that because I wasn't sure what you were referring to there. And I have a question on, in your project, is there lighting included in the project since you've heard that unsafe and the person who the fatality that occurred was at night? Is there any lighting proposed at all for the project?
I'm not sure, and I would ask Alan, who was at the meeting, who was a member of the Transportation Committee, whether he remembers if there is lighting. I don't believe so, but
I will say though that I believe we are scheduled to put in a pole down at Jolina Court to help illuminate that sidewalk, and we could be exploring additional lighting as the situation develops.
If you don't mind, please, yes, consider that, because if it's a safety issue, people are walking in early evening or early morning, so lighting is a factor. And my last question is, I know that some of the existing sidewalks are in need of repair, like if everybody walks on West Main in front of the Catholic Church, that sidewalk is all cracked up and uneven and stuff like that. Do we know when that is on? I know with Route 2 being done, we postponed East Main Street's work. I didn't know if West Main Street was being postponed too, or if that's on the books. I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just trying to make sure we understand all of our sidewalk inventory and where we're at as we add new sidewalks.
So I know that from conversations with our road foreman, Pete Goslin, that he's planning on doing the East Main Street sidewalks this summer in conjunction with the Route 2 paving project. I'm sorry, I don't know what he has discussed West Bridge Street previously, but I'm sorry, Cara, I don't remember when he was planning to get at that. And
Just, Chris, for what
Grant?
it's worth, he's on the schedule to give us an update of this year's projects. I think he's like third thing on the schedule, so we'll find the answer to that out very shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is that part of your transportation committee's role, is to also possibly keep an inventory of our existing bike paths, sidewalks, things like that, for any safety recommendations that might be brought to your attention?
If there's safety recommendations with existing infrastructure, we would welcome hearing from the community as to what those are. We recently did, members of the Transportation Committee and volunteers from the community recently did a walkability study that looked at the area. Well, Alan participated on it, but it looked at Bridge Street, the Upper Bridge Street intersection with Route 2. It looked at Jonesville, and I believe it looked at the Round Church area for walkability. And so we have a lot of great information about the deficiencies in our pedestrian infrastructure from that tour. And we are scheduled to do a presentation about that walkability report to the select board sometime in May. And one of the things that we're working on is a matrix that identifies all those deficiencies and then points to other projects that have been scoped on the town for inclusion, so that if the town were to move forward, let's say on the Bridge Street Complete Streets study, and those improvements, which included that Upper Bridge Street sidewalk, as well as working on some of those issues like at Cumbies, that we incorporate some of these other deficiencies. As it relates to existing sidewalks and their deficiencies, they really need to be addressed by the town, because there are no grant programs at the state level for repair and maintenance of sidewalks. There is for new sidewalks, but not for repair and maintenance, which is the municipality's responsibility.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Kara. Let's take one more comment or question. Matthew?
Hi, good evening. Yeah, I'm excited to hear about these improvements on Bridge Street. I guess a couple of questions here. One is, since it's not currently feasible to do the north side of the project, essentially, is there an idea of when that would be completed? Do we require grant funding for that? I'm just trying to get a little bit of, background on what that, because in my opinion, without having both of them done at nearly the same time, it kind of is a half measure, essentially, because that probably the second busiest, and I think people in the Transportation Committee can speak to this, the second busiest kind of area there is obviously south of the south of the red light, and then kind of north of the grocery store / Jolina corn. It's a heavily trafficked area because of the restaurants, grocery stores, hardware store, et cetera, et cetera. And then that long stretch on the west side of Bridge Street is basically below the dentist office, just past the grocery store, is not really a sidewalk. It's just it's pavement, essentially. So I think that's kind of important, I think, if we're, for this project. In addition, there's a lot of residents on Pleasant Street. I use Pleasant Street. I live on East Main Street, but there's no crosswalk. And yes, you can go back up farther, but I don't even think it would cost much, essentially, to paint it, to just have another crosswalk at Pleasant Street, because that's a blind corner right there for anyone there. So anyways, that's just my 2 cents. I'm glad that we're going to potentially do a part of it, but it'd be really great if we had a timeline or a process of knowing what has to be done in order to get that northern section of the sidewalk done. Thank you.
Information on that?
Chris could probably speak better to the funding process on that one.
Chris, do you have any information on that?
I do. we did receive the TAPA grant award, which funds the lower Bridge Street sidewalk, but the ARPA committee had wanted to know when we were going to get that funding decision. I don't know what decisions the ARPA committee has made regarding its priorities for spending on infrastructure in the town, but that is a potential source of funding for the upper sidewalk and some of the Bridge Street improvements.
Okay, again, putting my ARPA hat on. The Transportation Committee did indeed come to the ARPA committee requesting funding in two chunks. They requested $219,509 for the remaining Bridge Street Complete Streets project work, and they requested $64,000 on the assumption that we would get the TAP grant. Since we have gotten the TAP grant, the ARPA committee at our next meeting can vote to recommend that we recommend to the select board that we go ahead and cut the rest of the money loose. We've been trying to move with all deliberate speed, but if the ARPA committee and the select board want to go ahead and allocate those two pots of money, then that's something that can happen. We just won't be doing that tonight. Okay, we do need to keep on going. We're trying to get the meetings to end before midnight each night. Kara, do you have any other critical questions to ask?
One question, in your budget, I think you passed was $25,000 for new sidewalks. So would that be net against the $64,000 that they'd be requesting? That was all, is you put $25,000 into your budget for FY24. So whatever we need to quote, potentially fund from ARPA should have that deducted from it.
Okay, that's a good point.
Thank you.
I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Chris especially for sharing this information. I'd like to move on in the agenda to our next bullet point, which is directly related to this. The town has been awarded the Transportation Alternative Program TAP grant. I'd like to share the grant letter so that people can see it. It should be coming up on your screen. This is a letter from the state, from the Municipal Assistance Bureau and the Highway Division. As you hopefully can see, I'll stop scrolling. The selection committee has voted to award us $256,000 in federal funds, which will require $64,000 in matching funds. And of course, there are requirements for what it's spent on and how we spend it. Josh, would you like to add anything about what we have to do to comply with this grant?
Well, the next step is to sign the letter of intent that you're going to accept the grant. And then once we accept the grant, we'll have to follow the grant guidelines, proceed with procurement. I think we'll need to do engineering, final study engineering, and then proceed to construction bidding.
Okay, so the legal step that we had, that's before the select board tonight, is simply to accept the grant. Does anybody in the select board have any questions? Members of the public? Okay, is everybody willing to make the motion to accept the TAP grant? It's here in the memo if you need it.
Looking for it. I move to accept the Transportation Alternative Program grant for construction of a sidewalk on the east side of Bridge Street from Jolina Court to Esplanade Street and to approve the project commitment form.
And we have a motion from Jeff Ford to accept the grant. Do we have a second?
Jay, this is David. I'll second.
A motion from Jeff Forward. Second by David Sander. Kara, please go ahead.
Is it required that you all determine where the matching funds come through with accepting the grant, or can you do that at a later date and time? Because you're by accepting this grant, you're committing the $64,000. And if you don't have it in your budget, do you have to commit it from where it's coming from? It's a technical question, but I want to make sure you cover your bases.
It is in the capital plan, and there's also consideration by the ARPA committee to cover that with ARPA funds instead of the capital plan.
Right, and the letter that we are sending, we'll be
But
sending
the
to.
ARPA committee doesn't vote on money. So it's the select board that votes on money, not the ARPA committee. So the select board could vote on that money without it having to go through the ARPA committee, because we're only making recommendations, right? Okay.
Right,
So
the letter that we have to send to the state accepting the grant does not at this time require us to specify exactly where the $64,000 comes from. If we can find it by looking under the sofa cushions, then
Thank
And it's-
thank you, Jay. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't required in the grant. Thank you.
It's the $64,000 question.
It literally is a $64,000 question. Thank you, David.
So, and I think in the past, we've generally
I tried.
had this discussion, if
Mhm.
we're gonna accept the grant and it requires matching funds, that we say, where is it coming from?
Yes, you
And
did.
we say it's coming from A or B, but as opposed to, oh, we'll just figure it out when later.
Sure.
It would seem to be fiscally prudent and transparent to say, where's the 64 coming from?
Okay, so as Kara mentioned, we've got $25,000 already in the budget. We have a recommendation that the ARPA committee has been asked, but as Kara said, the ARPA committee only makes recommendations, we don't actually allocate the money. If the select board would like to amend the motion to say, and we will spend up to $64,000 of ARPA money on this project, a motion to that, an amendment to that effect could be accepted.
Is it less than 25? 64 less than 25?
We're less than 25 if you
I
like,
wanna-
it's up to whoever makes the motion.
Before we, trying to remember
And
that.
Alan has a comment too.
That 25, and I haven't reviewed this in the budget recently, but was that the allocation that was supposed to go into the sidewalk reserve fund?
Yes,
So that's gonna go into what we would then ultimately pull out of the sidewalk reserve fund to pay for this. Okay,
So we could do 64 from ARPA less 25 and
and then, okay, sure.
40.
Chris?
So
Thank you.
just to bring us up to speed, where I think the sidewalk reserve fund is at with the 25 added in the 2024 budget would be approximately $65,000, which we had intended as the match for this grant. But at the ARPA committee, you guys discussed holding back the town money and spending the ARPA money instead. But in either A or B, the town has the local match for the grant.
Okay, so to his point, we do have, the ARPA committee, again, the ARPA money can be spent. We've got the equivalent amount of money already in the budget in the available pot. We could dispense with ARPA and use that money. We could use that money for other sidewalk projects. What does the select board think?
The new sidewalk project can only be spent, the 25,000 can only be spent on new sidewalks. That can't be spent somewhere else, whereas the ARPA can be spent somewhere else. It can be spent on other stuff.
So just, here it's popping up here.
Oh, can make that any smaller.
I can make it smaller, sure. Let me, if I can make it bigger.
There's a plus up there on your menu, right?
Okay. So this is the capital plan. So we're looking at the sidewalk reserve, new sidewalk reserve. Has $10,000 in it. FY 24, it has budgeted $25,000 to go back into it, raised from taxes. So I'm thinking this one, we had looked at using 16,250 of it, and that I believe was to go towards, Bridge Street Phase 1. Was phased out with 16,000 and up to 32,000. So right now we have 10, we're putting 25 in, we'll get it to 35 at the end of FY 23.
So could we make a motion that could we amend the motion to say the funds would come from either the capital plan and or the ARPA fund? That work?
I would only observe, I think the capital plan is a generic term, and I think we talk sidewalk reserve.
Sidewalk reserve, so.
Yeah.
okay.
I think that.
So is that detailed enough in your opinion?
I think so. I mean, we have a third choice, which is unassigned funds. It's not lost on any of us that we have vacancy savings. So just, I only think we ought to be clear when we say we're committing money of our own, that we should have some sense of what it would be, subject to modification later.
Agreed. So would you?
So
what-
I would amend my motion to say that all of what I said before, whatever that was.
That's clean.
And add to it, with the funds coming from the sidewalk reserve fund in the capital plan and ARPA money.
Okay, is that amendment okay with you? Okay, so David agreed to the amendment. Is there any other discussion before we move to a vote? Okay, seeing no further discussion, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
David, aye.
Jeff, I.
Bard, I.
and J.I. Okay, I apologize. I lied a little while ago and said Pete was number 3. Pete is number 4. The next item of business on the agenda relates to some recommendations from the Transportation Committee related to Cochran Road. And in general, one has to do with lowering the speed limit, and we have some guidance from our attorneys on that. And the other item is in relation to essentially doing a share the road educational campaign. So Chris or Alan, is one of you prepared to speak to these recommendations?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we were approached by a citizen, Francis Churchill, who recommended both of those items. One was, and we had been visited by Mr. Bissett a meeting or two before that, also on Cochran Road, and there is some anxiety within the town about the construction project on Route 2 and Cochran Road's availability, because as you know, people do use the road. And I think Mr. Bissett was concerned about organized functions closing the road, and Mr. Churchill was concerned about the speed limit on Cochran Road when a lot of Route 2 traffic will probably be using it as an unofficial detour to get around the construction project on Route 2. And then in our research and looking at what it would take to reduce the speed limit on Cochran Road in state statutes, it requires for any paved road to undergo an engineering and traffic study. And I did contact the Agency of Transportation to ascertain whether or not there was any relief from this with respect to temporary reductions as a result of one of their construction projects on a state highway, and they indicated no, that they couldn't find anything in statute either that would give a municipality the ability to temporarily reduce it. So that's where that one stands. We were reminded at our meeting by CCRPC that municipalities do reduce their speed limits without the engineering study, but those speed limits would not be enforceable by law. So that was number one. We still felt as a transportation committee that even if the speed limit were reduced to 35, even if it wasn't enforceable, it was probably a good thing to do given the increase in traffic. But reasonable minds can differ. The second one had to deal with, and it was really a nice presentation that Francis did. It was about how different points of view when you're using your transportation vehicle of choice, whether it's a bicycle or a vehicle, how they have different concepts to share the road. And he really wanted to highlight those for residents within town so that we all use common sense and we're all just a little bit more charitable towards each other in terms of passing vulnerable users and really spelling out what the rights of vulnerable users who are bicyclists and pedestrians, and those of us that drive around in motor vehicles. And because from my own experience in Richmond, not everybody who drives through our town or lives in our town is aware of their responsibilities from my own interactions with folks. So, and that goes from wearing bright clothes as a pedestrian or a bicyclist when you're going out, especially early morning and early evening hours. And we're approaching that time of the year where there will be more activity going on the roadway. So we thought that made a heck of a lot of sense to us. And so we agreed with him and pushed that recommendation onto the select board to adopt. You should know that Local Motion has reached out to us prior to our having that meeting, and they couldn't attend, but offered support and resources for such an educational campaign if the town wanted to embark upon that.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. I think one of the obvious questions in probably everybody's mind is, what does it actually mean to have an unenforceable speed limit? Is it basically just a serving suggestion?
Yeah, I think interim chief Eric's on the call, but we talked about this a bit last week. And he likened it, and I'll use his blue car example. If we pass a law that it's illegal to drive a blue car in town, but it's not enforceable, you can't just start pulling over blue cars and telling people, well, in Richmond, you can't do that, but we can't really give you a ticket for it, because then you're illegally pulling somebody over. So if we post a speed limit of 35 and somebody's doing 40, we can't pull them over and give them a ticket for 5 over, because the speed limit is actually 45.
Jeff,
Can you give them a warning?
No, because it would be the same idea as the blue car. You can't pull them over and say, you really can't drive a blue car here,
Why not? I don't understand. why not.
because it's not the actual law. It's not the actual speed limit. I went, honestly, Jeff, I went down that, like, well, maybe we could do a campaign, and Chief Eric stopped me. He was like, no, I can't pull somebody over for driving under the speed limit, even if the posted speed limit is below the actual speed limit.
Unfortunately, this field has been plowed before in terms of what we could turn up. I have a slightly different question. So if it's officially 45 and we post it at 35, can we pull over somebody for going 46?
Technically, yes.
I mean, I'll leave that to Chief Eric is on the call if he wants to respond. I think we could, but he knows a lot better than I.
he's just unmuted, so. Go ahead, Ben.
So to answer the first question that came up of why can't we just issue a warning? The law is the law, whatever the number is the law. And people have a constitutionally protected right to not be pulled over by the police when they're not breaking the law. And so if the law is 45 miles an hour and somebody puts up a sign that says 35 and we stop somebody for speeding over 35, we violated their constitutional right. So that's my answer to that. My answer to the other question, I would have to do some research, maybe talk with an attorney. But I believe that if the town ordinance says that the speed limit is 45 and you post it knowingly, you go out and say, hey, we're just going to throw up a 35 sign, even though the ordinance is 45, that doing that, I believe doing that would nullify the 45 and it would default to the basic rule speed limit, which in the state of Vermont is 50.
That's my question.
Okay, so we basically have 3 options relating to this. We can 1, do nothing. 2, go with the 35 mile an hour speed limit, which would be marked but unenforceable, but we would hope it would have some traffic calming. Or 3, we could go through the legal route and actually do a speed study and actually do the ordinance route to make it an enforceable speed limit. So do nothing, do an unenforceable, or go through the longer steps to make it enforceable. Jeff?
Could we, I don't know, just saying, could we enforce the current speed limits on Cochran Road, which do not seem to be enforced right now?
Well, the issue with that is the available police to do it.
Okay, but with the police that we do have, could they spend their time on Cochran Road enforcing the speed limit on Cochran Road?
And to that question, if somebody's going 46, pull them over. It's posted 45. If you're going anything over 45.
And they don't have to issue a ticket necessarily. A warning would be, would teach the lesson, which is what we're trying to do, is teach people that this is a problem.
Lisa?
Yeah, wasn't there some speed data collected over the last couple of years on the roads? I don't know if it was formally collected.
Well, I think we've got some data from a speed cart that we had put up, but the study that would be needed for speed limit change is a more involved study that's conducted by a traffic engineer. Speed collection is part of it. Looking at existing conditions is another part of that. And I'm not sure that on the straightaway portion of Cochran Road, they would come back with a recommendation for a lower speed. They might, but you never really know. A lot of these speed studies I've seen, they come back with a recommendation for the same speed. That said, we did have a slight lowering of the speed limit on Heinsberg Road and I think part of Huntington Road recently.
Right.
Okay. Thoughts? Do we want to, there are three options that I see. If you see a fourth option, I guess the fourth option is unamended, do nothing, but start militantly enforcing the existing speed limit
With the officers that we don't have.
with the officers that we don't have, correct? Or
And furthermore, perhaps try to secure additional patrols of that specific area from neighboring towns or the sheriff or something. That's one thing we could contemplate. You know, come over intermittently in an hour, you can go back and forth and try to enforce the 45 if we think that's a priority.
I think that's possible.
And were we not going to get data from the radar signs that are?
right, I need, Ben needs to give me the key and I'll take my letter out. Apparently the data's there. We've just never taken the steps to, I don't know what you have to do to get the data out. I assume there's a chip.
We do have staff.
But I'm the one who volunteered to do it.
Elon Musk on the phone, I'll find it.
There's been some history of me volunteering to do this and I just should get around to getting the access. Is there, Ben, is there a key that we need? How do we access the data on the signs we've got out?
Yeah, there's a key that you need. We also have to get the signs set to get the program or get the speeds at the time. We have to adjust the program in order to get the data. The speed sign at the east end of the road, I went up, it wasn't working. I went up, reset it. It started working again, and I drove by it at the end of my last shift and it didn't come on. I don't know if that was because it was dark and the solar, the battery had just been used up at that point, or if there's another problem, but
We have asked that if possible, we check the battery on that sign.
I thought we were replacing the batteries last week or the week prior.
so I opened it up and the battery was fine. The problem was with the electronics. And I called the company, they walked me through how to reset it, and I reset it, and then I went back. I think it was the next night. But like I said, I went back at the end of my shift and it wasn't working.
Okay, so that's new since we talked last week.
Yes.
So Josh, I guess it goes without saying, can we follow up on that?
Yep.
Okay, Pete? Pete, do you want me to just read that? Would we be in the right to ask the Vermont State Police to do additional speed patrol on Cochran Road due to the impact from the Route 2 paving project?
Hey, we can ask.
Yeah.
We can ask. It's not a bad idea. I see a hand up from KM. KM, could you identify yourself and ask your question or make your comment?
Oh, hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, my name's Kyle Montgomery. I live on Cochran Road, on the 25-mile-per-hour side near the village. And on the note of posting the speed limit down to 35, that was not enforceable. The way I kind of see it, and I see a lot of the traffic come through. And first, kudos to Richmond Police Department. They do a good job down here on enforcing the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. But the people I see coming through, it seems like are people passing through, like watching company trucks from outside of the area, or out of state license plates, or people recreating at Cochran's. Those are the people who are speeding through here. And I think posting a 35-mile-per-hour speed limit, though it's not enforceable, would kind of help mitigate that out of town traffic that doesn't necessarily know, just because this is a large straightaway, to slow down a little bit. And that's all I really got.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. I would be okay with posting it as a 35 because, as Kyle has said, people aren't going to know that it's not enforced. The people who are possibly the biggest offenders. Now, they can always be scofflaws and ignore a 35 speed limit just as well as they can ignore a 45. But if it does result in an incremental increase in safety, it might be worth doing. But those are just my thoughts. Jeff?
So where we've heard the most comments on are not on the 45-mile-an-hour stretch. It's on the 25-mile-an-hour stretch at either end. We do hear conflict with, other users of the road in the 45 mile an hour. And that's, frankly, I think the resolution coming up is helpful. It's actually very consistent with what the Transportation Committee was talking about. But it seems to me that whatever police we have or can use from wherever we can find them, one of our highest priorities would be, patrolling Cochran Road. It's what we've been hearing for as long as I've been on the board, which is not that long, but it's almost every meeting. So maybe, allocating, a significant patrol time to that during peak times of the day when it's the biggest problem would be useful.
Lisa?
We can just park a couple of our unused cruisers out there.
Sorry, we're all laughing because that we say almost every time. Good.
The concept of a pace car crossed my mind, so we can take the cruisers and go 35 back and forth.
I'll drive it.
Somebody's been watching too much NASCAR. Kara?
As somebody who lives out on Route 2, and when the conditions are right, I fear if you don't have an enforceable speed limit, you're tying the hands of your police officers that are actually writing tickets in that area, like Kyle had said. My concern is, let's be real, if word gets out, we're talking drag racing on Cochran Road. And I think Mary Hool has seen it before years ago, because she's been on Cochran Road in that flat stretch there for a number of years. And I remember her saying something at a select board meeting before that it had been a problem.
Mary is here.
That the
Mary, would you like
police-
to reply to that?
That the police actually were able to, because we had more officers at the time, were able to make sure that didn't continue.
Yeah, this was back when Chief Miller was here.
Mhm.
And there were motorcycle drag races as well as vehicle drag races. Maybe we should charge $1,000 a car and just let them have a Saturday.
Mary, could we deputize you and give you a speed gun?
You betcha.
Okay. Kyle, go ahead.
In response to the problem not being the 45 mile per hour area, which I understand the big complaints are about the 25 mile per hour areas. As one of the first houses in the 25 mile per hour area on the village end of Cochran Road, when people see 45 miles per hour, they decide 55 is okay. And as they come into the 25, they're still going 55. But it would, if there was a 35 mile per hour speed limit sign up, 45 would be okay. And maybe we'd get lucky and they'd slow it down to 35 once they got onto the 25 mile per hour zone. And there is a downhill and a straightaway as you come from Cochran's towards the graveyard. And again, as somebody who lives right here on this end of the road, and even coming into my driveway slowing down, I can easily still come in at 30 miles an hour, and that feels comfortable. But if the speed limit was lower, I just really believe that, out of town folks would see that and understand it.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. Okay, does anybody in the select board want, I'm sorry, Alan, go ahead.
For the traffic engineer at CCRCP, Eleni Churchill, and I hope I'm quoting her correctly because it's been a year or so, but the way to control vehicle speed on roadways is to engineer a roadway so that the speed that you desire is the speed that it is comfortable to drive at. And unless we're going to go out and blow potholes in Cochran Road or put railroad tracks across it, the answer is speed bumps, speed tables. They don't need to be things that, at 15 miles an hour, you bounce your head off the roof of the car. You can have a very shallow speed table that can be traversed comfortably at 35 miles an hour without taking your foot off the gas or hitting the brake. But if you hit it at 45, you'll have a memory. And that would be my recommendation. And I don't think you need a speed study. You can have a 45 mile an hour speed limit on a road that you can only drive 35 on. Potholes do it all the time. So do the railroad tracks on Bridge Street.
And Josh, to that point, what was our schedule for putting those temporary speed tables in?
So those were just on the west end of Cochran Rd to this side, the village side. We're waiting for a study from CCRPC, which should be hopefully here this spring, and then they'll have recommendations on where to locate those speed tables in the 25-mile-an-hour zone.
Tables or bumps? I think they're bumps.
I think they were more of a table, but
It's a thing that encourages you to slow down. I was thinking in terms of another associated with the speed tables, presumably a signage that says caution, slow down, speed table, that it has this sort of calming effect or slowing down effect on people in vehicles.
Or maybe Sharon's on the road.
Mary?
Yeah, if I could offer briefly, I'm sure we've all traveled around and we've seen a police car parked here or there, and we go, oh, no, so you automatically slow down. But I would not advocate for putting them in an area where there's not, like, they welcome to park in my driveway, but rather than just, randomly where there's no one else around, I don't think that's a good idea, because that might, oh, it's empty, you don't want to invite acts of vandalism. But way back when Chief Miller was here, I said that they could park in my driveway. And just leaving a vehicle, as someone pointed out, we do have a few of them around, and parking them, I think would be a visual deterrent. Parking one at Cochran's ain't a bad idea. Thank you.
So, does any member of the select board wish to make a motion relating to the speed limit of any kind?
I do not. I hope our discussion has been given enough direction to, the police department about, and enough ideas that, some action can be taken.
Similarly, I'm thinking if we could take an unusual kind of zero tolerance approach to 46 and a 45, 26 and a 25, get you a ticket, if that's viable. I think that in itself, because when I go out there, it is apparent to me that there are people going way above the current speed limit. They're going in the 50s, like, and you get used to it, like, oh, they're going to speed limit, and then somebody goes by 15 miles an hour faster. It's pretty obvious they're going much faster than the standard speed.
Well, and I would suggest that, ticketing is not necessarily the answer. We had we were noted as being a very high ticket town under, previous police chief, and that's not necessarily helpful either. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to educate people. So, I think warnings they work on me. If a cop stops me and I'm going too fast, I remember that spot and I do not do that. But, 2 or 3 times, then,
Fair point. So warnings escalating to ticket.
Yeah.
What, you again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Well, I appreciate all the discussion, and Josh has been taking notes over here for some follow-up steps. The other half of the Transportation Committee's report out had to do with the Share the Road educational campaign in concert with Local Motion and CCRPC. I think that's an excellent idea. Comments?
Yeah. The only comments I've heard, and this is a sensitive subject, that I've heard some people say the problem is all motor vehicles, the entire solution is motor vehicle behavior. And I've heard other people say it's the 3 bicycles going slowly, refusing to get over to the right. So I'll just say, I think the issue of sharing the road is heavily biased towards vehicular behavior, because under the physical laws of mass velocity squared, they're going to cause a lot more damage than anybody else. But that said, I think there also are part of sharing the road, literally, if we think of sharing as I'm sharing with you, you're sharing with me, that it also, we then encourage sort of sharing like behavior from all users, including but not limited to vehicles.
Lisa?
Thinking, there's no reason you couldn't ticket 3 bikes riding together.
Well, it's actually illegal to do more than 2. That's actually, I've got the law if anybody wants to see it.
The enforcement is, could be for any breaking of the law.
Yeah.
But if we have coverage, then we're going to start on it.
Yeah.
So, Jeff?
And I
Lisa, I can't quite, Lisa, if you can go closer to the mic when you talk, if you don't mind, thank you, because we can't quite hear what you're saying.
That wasn't totally intentional, Kara, but okay, thanks.
Okay, Jeff.
I thought that the resolution that Nick Ponzio presented to us last meeting
Right.
was really good. You know,
Right.
it covered a lot of those bases, you know, and
Yeah, and that's on the agenda a little ways down the road. So,
you know, I think what we, at that time, we should read it. You
okay,
know, what it is, you know, so to give a little bit of more public notice, and I love the idea of the Transportation Committee taking this on as an issue and with local motions help.
okay. So Nick does have a resolution and we will be discussing whether or not to amend it or adopt it. Do people want to delay the issue of us possibly voting for a share the road campaign until that agenda item or? Okay, seeing no objection. Our next item on the agenda is our esteemed town highway foreman, the legendary Pete Goslin. Pete has the summer work plan for this year to share with us. It's got a lot of great stuff in it. So Pete, are you ready?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. I don't know about legendary, but I guess I'll go with it. Another very busy season in front of us. I'll just kind of go down through the months kind of briefly, and if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to take them at the end. To start off this plan, we're going to switch to a 4 10-hour schedule, go from 5 days to 4 and work 10 hours a day. It works the best. We get the most production that way. Originally I had put down that we're going to start on the 27th. We're actually going to start on the 20th. Things are moving much faster. The snow's gone. We're already well into our April work at this point. We're starting to grade all the dirt roads right now. We're starting to prep those for finish grading for chloride at the end of the month. Sidewalks, our pavement sweepers should be coming in either the end of this week or next week to sweep all the village streets and developments. We have the Vector scheduled for April 14th to clean all the storm drain sumps out. And we have a Better Roads grant on Snipe Island Road that has to be completed by June 30th. I had that in the month of April. It's actually going to be in the month of May. In May, where we do our typical line striping for all our crosswalks, parking lots, parking stalls. We're going to be prepping the parking gravel lot at the Volunteers Green for paving. And we're going to be starting the first week in May to replace the asphalt sidewalks on the west side of Bridge Street, the pre-existing asphalt sidewalks that go from Railroad Street to the Iron Trust Bridge. They're all going to be removed. The sub base will be prepped for concrete. The curbs got done last fall, which everybody knows. This will be finished hopefully by first week, maybe second week at the latest in May. Green belt installed between the sidewalk and the curb. Following that will be the paving. We're going to mill about 2 inches of the surface off on Bridge Street, starting from the railroad tracks all the way up to the Iron Bridge, and repave that whole surface so we'll have a nice smooth transition. We did the upper segment a year ago from the tracks up to the light, and this will be the next piece. That's all fiscal year 23 projects that we didn't finish from last summer. Moving ahead into June, we're going to be, that's the contracted work, that's the paving I just discussed. We're going to finish up our gravel plan from last year. Johnny Brook Road is going to get resurfaced with about 3 inches of gravel. And let's see what else we are. Snipe Island Road, 2 miles of Snipe Island Road will also be resurfaced. That's in our plan. We have one big culvert on Hidden Pine Circle that's about 6 feet deep that's failed. It's collapsing. And that's in asphalt. That one's going to have to be replaced in June also. July, the first week or so in July is a little sketchy because of the 4th. So we kind of split it half and half. Half the crew takes it off, the other half stays behind. Roadside mowing also starts in the month of June, continues all the way till like September. It's like 2.5 months worth of work. I'm jumping back, sorry. Typically on rain days, we haul in winter sand, utilize those down days that we can't work out on the roads. And also our budget starts in July, so we'll have that money to spend starting after July 1st. We're looking to also start sometime in July, the sidewalk and curb replacement on East Main Street, which would be north and south side. This has to go in conjunction with VTrans. They need to remove all the panel bases and put the sub base gravel in before we can do this work. So depending on their schedule, which if looking at their production from last year, I'm almost sure this is not going to hit in July. I think this is going to be a fall thing. But that is in that schedule with that fiscal year 24 money that's in our stormwater projects. Moving into August, hopefully we can start that and finish that work. We have a failed culvert in Southview Drive. This is right as you first turn onto the road, the first low point in Southview Drive. There's an old metal culvert that's takes the drainage from like where the reservoir is, crosses under Jericho Road, and then it crosses under Southview Drive. It's had a lot of signs of settlement. We've been patching it over the years. That's another deep excavation. We've got to get that one fixed. So that's on the schedule for then. Moving into September, if we have the time, there's 3 sections of stage road that have springs in the roadbed that need to have under drain installed. We'd like to get those done well before we ever get to that road and resurface it again. And then October is kind of a miscellaneous month. We finish up any of these projects that we didn't get done. We prepare the grounds for winter. We winterize the concession stand. We get our trucks ready. We, pull the summer stuff out. We put sanders in our 1-ton trucks. We get our plows ready, get all the hydraulics fixed, make sure everything's ready to go for November 1st, because we all know winter can start. So we're getting a little jump on it this year because the weather's broke early and the snow's gone. So we've been actively working on stuff, for the last 2 weeks. So we're brush cutting right now, and we should be done by Thursday this week. We'll be done our brush cutting for this season. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of juggling around, but the fact that we're not mowing properties anymore, we can be so productive on construction, and it seems to be working. So that's the best I can outline it right there.
Hey, Pete, thank you. I did notice in the invoices, the purchases of those 3 large stencils for the Volunteers Green parking lot. Very much looking forward to seeing those get put to use.
Yes, bicycle emblem that's just going to go on Bridge Street, which, after the pavement's done, of course, both directions. It's a directional bike arrow. And then there's actual arrows that are going to be put in the Volunteers Green to direct the traffic correctly into the green and out of the green, and also into the stone's throw and out of the stone's throw. So when that's all line striped, it's going to be very easy to understand where to go in there, and it should be clean and neat.
Yep, I think that's going to be great. Before we go to Sue, Lisa?
Question for Pete, still there?
Yes.
Pete, where the patrol cars are parked in the library or town center parking lot, is that something that's, what's my question? Is it difficult to plow them out anywhere else? I mean, I think part of the reason they're parked there is because it's easy to plow, or it's accessible to the police station or what have you. Is there any other area that you think might be suitable from your point of view?
So the way the town center is configured, it pitches from Bridge Street all the way to the back corner behind the post office. That's the natural course of the water it wants to drain. And at the eastern end of that parking lot, there's ample space to push the snow and push it up on a pile. Up against that road where the police cars are, you can't push snow into that area. You'll lose all those parking spaces. So number one is we push all the snow one direction to one end, and it drains and it doesn't ice the parking lot up every time it thaws and water runs across the parking lot. And the drainage is also in that lower corner. As far as, in the town center, that is the best place to park a vehicle for long-term, because we can plow right around at the EV stations right there. And, it works well for, plowing. But if you were to plow it down to the other end, we're either going to push snow against it. We're going to be plowing around it and putting huge piles next to the vehicle. So it's really not a good place to put a vehicle.
Gotcha. Okay, that's good enough.
Jeff?
So Pete, I'm really, really hoping that you're not going to have to do very much more plowing.
Me too.
So in the the times when we don't have snow, it would seem that, while that is convenient for the police department to park their cars there, they're not using all of them now. And it's also really convenient for the library too. And the library has, gets quite a bit more use actually than the police cars are at the moment. Yeah. I don't know, I would ask if we could move some of those cars to the back of the parking lot in whatever place is out of Pete's way is, for, till fall, really.
And we'd have to move the signage too, I think, is just remove the signage as PD parking only. I think that's reasonable now that we're out of snow season.
That's doable, isn't it, to move the signs, Pete?
But yeah, just pull them out of the ground. That's fine. I mean, Chief Herrick's on. I think, you can certainly ask him. For us, it's just the winter maintenance that hampers us. But like you say, in another week or so, it's not going to be an issue. So it's just going to become a
Chief Herrick, what do you think about the idea of moving some of the cars to the back of the lot?
I will move them the next, on Wednesday when I'm in.
Okay, if you can coordinate with Pete getting the signs moved, that would be great.
If we could keep there's one sign, I think, that says police parking only. If we could keep that one spot for whoever's on duty, that would be helpful.
Okay. Okay, other comments from the select board about the plan?
It's great, thank you.
Okay, Sue Wells.
I just have a question. I can't remember whether it was in May or June, but you talked about some paving projects.
Yes.
And Cochran Road was listed. What are you paving on Cochran Road?
for paving.
Well,
That's okay.
Something was listed.
That will be the eastern end of Cochran Road, just before Dugway Road. The last project ended right there, and it's going to continue from there up to the bridge down Duxbury Road and the big apron, long apron on Dugway Road. Those were all due in that paving project. The western end, which is the round church end, obviously there's nothing going there.
Okay. Yeah, we don't want to help speed the cars up.
Good point. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands, and there was no motion to be made here. So Pete, thank you and your wonderful crew. I know you guys have really allowed us to realize a lot of economies by not having to contract out for so many things, and I'm grateful for that. Okay, our next item on the agenda hopefully could be a relatively quick one. There are 2 state grants we apply for every year. The structures grant would be used this year to replace a failing and undersized culvert on Stage Road. The paving grant would be for 2 miles of paving on Huntington Road from Far Road to Grandview Drive. There is a 20% match for both of these grants. If awarded, the paving match would come out of the highway retreatment budget line, and the structures match would come out of the Bridge and Culvert Reserve Fund. Both of the grant applications are included in the Select Board's packet. Along with these grants, the Select Board also needs to sign off on what's called a TA-60 form, which certifies that the town raises at least $300 per mile of roads in town and certification of compliance for town road and bridge standards. And both those documents are in the packet as well. So we have a motion to approve all this in one big fell swoop. But before we even consider that, questions, comments from the Select Board on this item, on the structures grant, the paving grant, and certification to the state of our road numbers. Questions from the town? Do I have a motion?
This is Bart. I move to approve Form TA-60, the Certificate of Compliance for Town Road and Bridge Standards, and to apply for the structures and highway grants, and to name Pete Goslin as the grant program manager.
Okay, we have a motion from Bart Hill. Any second?
Jay, this is David. I'll second.
We have a second from David Sander. Any discussion of the motion?
The only thing I would say is I really appreciate Pete's work in bringing us up to date on what his plan is this year and keeping our roads in reasonably good shape. So thank you, Pete.
The one editorial comment I'd make is I really appreciate our compliance for town road and bridge standards and would only hope that someday the Agency of Transportation would comply with their state road and bridge standards.
I'll second that. Really?
Okay.
I'll third that.
Any other discussion?
I'm gonna keep the second.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve Form TA 60, the certificate of compliance for town road and bridge standards, and to apply for the structures and highway grants and to name Pete Gosselin as the grant program manager. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
David, aye. Jeff, aye.
Bard, aye.
And Jay, aye. Our next item on the agenda relates to grounds maintenance. As you've heard, the highway department, by not being in charge of the grounds maintenance, is freed up to do stuff that really is more in their wheelhouse, and we can leave the grounds maintenance to people who that's what they do. We have received bids this year for doing this work. Our previous contractor that we had last year, there were some issues, I think, with the quality of the work. They are bitter though, but they're actually, no, it's not so much the quality, it's that they were just more expensive.
Yeah.
And then we have two other bidders who were under them. One bid $415 more than the other, but has more staff and equipment. So the one that we're recommending going with is Mow and Maintain. They bid $415 more than Wagner's, but they have a larger staff than Wagner's and are located closer to Richmond. We believe we'll get more reliable service from Mow and Maintain. Questions, comments from the select board?
My only comment is because I think it's plausible and reasonable to think that we should consider reliability and its performance, not just cost. But my question is, how will we know if we in fact do or do not get more reliable service?
If we do or not get more reliable than Wagner's would have done.
Yeah, if we're selecting this bidder because we think we'll get more reliable service, then presumably that would lend itself to a measure that by which we could conclude that we did or did not get more
Right.
reliable service.
I mean, there's really no way to compare to Wagner's, but Pete and Duncan did some calling around on this and they can jump in with more details, but when they spoke with Wagner's, they were concerned about their level of staffing and amount of machines, and they were located further away. So they were just concerned if there was an issue with service at any point, it might be harder for them to adjust to that. And given the only other one was only $415 more, they were closer by with a larger staff. Looking at the scope of work, they felt that they would be better suited to accomplish that scope of work and adjust to any issues that might arise. But we won't have a direct comparison, because we can't have them both.
Yeah, so we don't have a question about reliability. We don't have a measure of reliability in the past. This is just our judgment based on their representation.
Yeah, and so doing some follow-up interviews with them to sort of ensure that we feel that they're qualified to carry out the work that we have.
Pete, do you want to comment?
Sorry, I wasn't paying attention, but we're talking about the mowing bids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what Mow and Maintain would probably provide better service than Wagner's.
Yeah, Wagner's was the lowest. Is that correct? That's the one from St. Albans.
Yes, they were lowest by about $415 over Mow and Maintain.
Yeah, so with that one, Duncan and I discussed a few things. We had a meeting and he reached out to him and my questions were the number on the crew, how many units they had, and if they had any work in this area, because they're coming 45 minutes away. The answer was one full-time person, two part-time people, and like 3 mowers. That's a lot of eggs in one basket to expect them to take care of 40 acres of land for the town of Richmond every week, including weed whacking. So, I mean, that just to me, it didn't add up. So it was easy to axe that one. And then Duncan went to Mow and Maintain was the next one. And I don't know if he's on tonight, but it looks like they have an ample sized crew. They're located out of Huntington. They claim they can do this work. You know, they know the scope of work. They've met with Duncan, gone over the stuff. They are second lowest bidder. So it sounds like they fit the bill. Personally, I'm very happy with the contractor we had last year. and it's too far. It's too bad his bid is so much further away from the second lowest bidder. I think Mary Hool's in the audience. She could offer some comments on his work also. But you know, it's hard to say, well, we don't want the lowest bidder. We want the higher bidder or vice versa. That's your call on that. So I can't find anything wrong with mow and maintain because I didn't do the research on them. But maybe Duncan could offer a comment if he's on tonight.
Duncan?
Yeah, I can definitely contribute. So I think it was a tough decision. It was good having first time to see it. We have a lot of competitive bids. I would be confident with hiring most of them, but like Pete said, just one of the travel concerns and the crew concerns with one of them. But everyone was very personable reaching out. Strom did a great job last year. So hate to, not give it to them, but likewise, Mow and Maintain gave us the most competitive offer, I feel.
Good answer. All right, Mary?
Yes, thank you, Mary Hool. I know that Strom started out a little rough in the beginning, but they came up to the quality and I think they did a good job, but they were also very conscientious about not knocking down the flowers that I had planted in any area. And that means a lot. I put a lot of work into that and they were very aware of it. And, it's just interesting. You didn't cite the amount of the, I heard that there's a $450 difference, but what was Strom's bid compared to the other two, if you don't mind my asking, please? And you also know that the person that graduates at the bottom of the class in medical school is still called doctor. So sometimes you pay for what you get.
No, I agree, Mary. I think that's a good point. I think Strom was about 10 to 15. I can look it up again. I don't have it right here. But they were.
Thank
and
you.
then what I was really impressed with all the contractors were they did reach out personally a lot. So I was able to make connections with them. So I feel confident like Strom did last year. There's going to be a little bit of, personal attention needs required, and we'll be able to do that. So I think that's, I'm confident in all those groups. It's not like it's just a blind dart. So.
Thank you.
Jeff?
So I really like this idea of hiring a contractor to do the mowing, to free up our road crew to do roads during the summertime. I think we've only been doing this for the last few years.
Last
year. Yeah, it seems like a great idea to me.
Hallelujah.
Who will be overseeing, and determine? Actually, I would appreciate her review of it. I mean, you know our grounds as well as anybody.
Well, I just know these grounds. I don't go to the cemetery, unless I'm going to be planted or anything like that. But I don't pay attention to the other stuff as much as what is here. And I have a lot more plantings this year because of all the daffodils and the tulips that I planted at the entrance. So I just, I don't know when they even start, but I just want to make sure that we get to see the tulips and the daffodils before they get cut down.
So
Thank you.
Last year, we've gone through Pete, back to Strom. So, and feedback came from various members of the community. If they saw something at the park or at the cemetery that they wanted to have a little more attention to, then, Pete would funnel that to the property maintenance folks and follow up with them.
So I frequented the park a lot last summer and I seen a lot of traffic and complaints. I mean, it wasn't a manicured golf course, but I thought it was acceptably done.
Okay. Well, I think perhaps, midway through the season, we should get an update on how it's going. This seems like a perfectly reputable. They're quite a bit less. I mean, even Strom bid less than, I thought we paid 45 last year.
We were around
The 30s.
Yeah, I think it
Was it in the 30s? Okay.
Yes.
And really, we talked a bit about that, looking at, we've got two bids right around 30 and then a 35 and then Strom's at 40. And if there was just one bid at 30, everybody else was clustered around 40, I'd probably consider, maybe 40 is the right way to go. But since there were two in that 30 range and another one about 5,000 more than that, kind of feels like that is probably the right price because we got three competitive bids in that range.
Makes sense. Jay, you ready for a motion?
I am ready.
This is Bart. I'd like to move to approve entering into an agreement with Mow and Maintain at an amount not to exceed $30,915 for 2023 grounds maintenance.
Okay, thank you, Bard. We have a motion from Bard Hill for that, to agree with mow and maintain. Do I have a second?
Oh, thanks. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a second from Jeff Forward. So we have a motion made by Bard Hill and seconded by Jeff Forward to approve our agreement with mow and maintain for an amount not to exceed $30,915 for 2023 grounds maintenance. Any further comment? Seeing none, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
David, aye.
Jeff, I.
Bard, aye.
And Jay, aye. Okay, our next agenda item is a follow-up to a previous meeting. As hopefully people know, Select Board certainly knows, we have scheduled a special town meeting in response to a petition from town voters to consider moving town meeting entirely to Tuesday and eliminating the Monday night meeting. At that same time, I raised the question of, one of the reasons this was even proposed was a very small number of people who wound up voting on the budget, 130 out of an electorate of 3,377 voters. And when this was discussed with me, people kind of lumped together the idea of moving to Tuesday and moving the budget vote back to Australian ballot as it was during 2021 and 2020 due to COVID. I said, what would be involved with that? Could we have a vote on that to take place at the same meeting? What would be involved? So this is just a follow up on, I guess, my question. The Vermont League of Cities and Towns, Susan Sinning, representative, responded to a question from us saying, yes, we can warn an article to switch to Australian ballot voting for a number of items, including approving the budget, the Australian ballot. We would just have to warn it as a town meeting. We have sample articles we could use for warning that. However, we don't have a petition asking for that. It's simply an idea that I brought up because citizens have mentioned it to me. That's pretty much all we've got in the agenda on it, unless people would like to discuss this further. Do you think it would be worth exploring having a second town meeting specifically to get the budget in front of the entire electorate and not just the people who can come on Tuesday morning? Questions, thoughts?
So do you want to have a discussion on this issue?
Oh, yeah,
now?
sure.
Okay, well, to me, town meeting is really one of it. Yes, it in person, in relation to the number of registered voters is small. However, it's also our biggest public hearing of the year, without question, way more than any other select board meeting that we ever had. And I find it engaging. I find the debate informative. And I find that when it's on Tuesday, as it traditionally is, we have much more going on. And we have town committees that attend there. One of the most valuable times that I have during a conventional town meeting is lunch. It's not on the agenda, but I get to talk to people that I don't get a chance to talk to throughout the year. So I miss it. I felt our Monday night experiment was not satisfactory.
But this question is not about the date. This question that's already going to be on a town meeting.
And if it's on Australian ballot, nobody will come. That would be my
and that's a valid point, right?
Very few people would come.
Okay, other thoughts? Lisa.
I'm kind of new at this. I haven't seen them, much in the past, but it seems that if the budget is on a ballot, it's either yes or no.
That's right. It cannot be amended.
That seems dangerous. I don't think we want to try to picture the next week or two of no budget and, the hurried meetings and what do we do now kind of thoughts. If it's able to be passed, piecemeal, kind of like it was this year, but passed, then that's a win, I think, for everybody. And if it takes a in-person process to do that, not an Australian ballot, then that's what we should do.
Okay. Bard?
I think that makes sense. I actually appreciate the comments that we receive at town meeting. One thing that I think we've contemplated briefly is, should we have some variation of more like public hearing on the budget, which is like 2 bites at the apple, like we get feedback at a public hearing at a presumably different date and time than town meeting before we formally approve the budget. And I just put that out as one other thing to do, but thinking, if it were worth trying to get more input on it. And I share the concern that, Australian ballot is binary, that it loses the subtlety of the conversations that we have in person at town meeting.
Okay, David, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'd be afraid to putting yeah.
Okay. And I'm happy with keeping things the way they are. It's just enough people raise the question with me. I thought we should at least
Right,
discuss it.
Yeah.
Are there any questions or comments regarding this idea, the idea of moving voting on the budget to entirely Australian ballot as it was in our 2 COVID years? Anybody want to comment on that? If not, we can simply move on to our next agenda item. Seeing no hands going up, we will move on. We had a question relating to the currently scheduled town meeting to consider moving town meeting back to regular March town meeting back to Tuesday. And the question was, does a quorum of the select board have to be present? And the answer is essentially no, we don't. The town clerk is the presiding officer. The Board of Civil Authority, the JPs, and actually, I guess us too, helps the clerk with voting, and the moderator runs the meeting. There is no requirement that the select board as such attend, although I certainly would, we would. Any questions or comments about that?
Jay, could you remind me of the date of that special meeting?
29th?
April 29th
Yeah, Saturday, April 29th.
at 9 a.m. at the library meeting room.
Yeah, I think it's a library, isn't it?
The library, yeah, I think
That's school vacation week.
Yeah, it worked out that because of when the petition was issued, we didn't have as much latitude to move it. So that's the date for good or ill.
And only people who are there can vote, right?
Correct.
So this is not a Zoom hybrid meeting.
That's right. Okay,
yeah, library.
our next item of business, which I believe we have people in the audience who've been patiently waiting to bring up, has to do with the Round Church Women's Run. We do have a request to authorize that run, and we have a representative here to speak to that. If you'd like to come on up and introduce yourself, and then tell us all about this.
Okay. Hi, I'm Hillary Holmes. I represent the Green Mountain Athletic Association. And we are requesting permission to hold a formal group event on Cochran Road. And following the meeting that I attended with you all a couple weeks ago, we have agreed to shift the date or the request for the date to the 23rd. And this year, did you all get a copy of the request letter?
We did, I'll share it.
Okay. We would like to reintroduce the 10K, which we eliminated during COVID. So that one turnaround happens just east of Cochran's, and then the second turnaround, I think at the bottom of the second page, there's a map. That might just be the 5K, but
Yeah,
the
I
10K
don't-
turnaround will be just before Dugway Road. A couple of years ago, we didn't really have a traffic incident. We just had a near miss because the 5K turnaround happens just west of Blind Hill. And I've worked with our course measurer to move that turnaround, the turnaround and the 10K turnaround west about 100 feet or so. I don't know if I said in the letter.
I believe you did. Yeah.
Okay, great. To avoid any concern about that.
Yes, you said it right here.
Okay, great. We will request police presence to help us close the road eastbound only. And I added to our letter this year, we will request that police support from a different town.
Mhm.
I sympathize or empathize with your
Mhm.
predicament about police support. Any questions?
Does this have the 10K turnaround on it?
It does not.
I think it just
The
has-
map doesn't.
No, but the letter, I think it only talks about, we might just need to make sure when we make a motion, talk about how far out.
Okay.
let me see the draft motion and the memo.
Well, actually, this is to talk about where the turnaround is gonna be, so it's
Okay.
probably just portions of Cochran Road and then. we can work out
But
details.
the 10K turnaround at Mary Hull's house, is that what I'm hearing?
Yep.
It's just beyond that by Doug, what you said.
The 10K turnaround is by Dugway. Yeah.
Okay, Jeff.
So how many people do you expect?
I pulled up my director's report from last year because you asked me last year and I couldn't remember. So we had 128 registered runners last year and 105 actually competed.
Okay.
We're gonna start earlier this year. We started at 8 last year, and because we're reintroducing the 10K, it'll be much hotter when those folks finish. So we're gonna start the race at 7:30, which may or may not impact how many people want to come.
About 100.
Probably about 100.
About 100. And are you proposing closing the road entirely or just one lane?
Just one lane, because it's the truck route for the state. We can't close it in both directions.
Okay.
I've been told we can.
Right, and by having it over by give or take 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning, hopefully that won't impact too many people.
Probably not.
Right.
Okay.
Comments from anybody else in the select board? Comments from the public?
I
Mary?
just want to appreciate you moving it to that Sunday. I mean, it accommodates the traffic on Route 2 and all the other fun things that happen. So thank you. Hope you have a good event. Thank you.
Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion?
This is Bart. I'd like to move to approve the Round Church Women's Run to be held on Sunday, July 23rd, 2023. And authorize the closure of Far Road, Thompson Road, and the eastbound lane of Cochran Road from 7:25 a.m. to 9:15 a.m. on the date of the event.
Okay, we have a motion from Bard Hill. Do we have a second?
I'll second, Lisa.
We have a motion from Bard Hill and a second from Lisa Miller to approve the Round Church Women's Run on July 23rd, 2023 and close certain roads. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
David, aye.
Jeff, aye.
Bart, aye.
And Jay, aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am excited to hear from the road crew that their truck is working out really well because they got it approved last year when I was there. Thanks,
Nice.
everybody.
Okay. Our next item of business relates to a proposed non-binding resolution sent to us by town resident Nick Ponzio. I'm going to bring that resolution up here on the screen so we can see it. Hopefully the select board has had a chance to read this letter and the resolution, but I will bring it up regardless. I will let Nick do the introduction himself, but essentially the resolution is, I'll just touch on I'll summarize it. Pedestrians and cyclists should wear high-vis clothing. Personal lights should be used 1 hour before sunset to sunrise. Pedestrians should travel on the left side of the roadway facing traffic. Cyclists should travel on the right side with vehicle traffic. Richmond encourages drivers to yield to vulnerable users with a minimum of 8 feet of clearance. Crossing a double yellow line is permitted in the presence of a vulnerable user, provided the other side of the road is not occupied by a vulnerable user or an oncoming vehicle. The only way to safely pass a vulnerable user and an oncoming car or a vulnerable user in the oncoming lane is to come to a stop until one of the parties has passed. The duty to yield rests entirely with the operator of the motorized vehicle. Vulnerable users have equal right to use public roads. The responsibility is not on the vulnerable user to remove themselves from the road, but instead is the duty of the motor vehicle operator to yield to the vulnerable user per state law. That's the resolution Nick has proposed. Nick, the floor is yours to elaborate further.
Thanks, Jay. There's been a lot of great discussion on this issue and appreciate the discussion that was happening earlier tonight at this meeting also. And I think the intent here is, as I said last meeting, was to just seeking some leadership from the select board to set some guidelines about how our roads should be used by both so-called vulnerable users and motorists.
Bart?
So I was wrestling with, and this came up earlier. The first sentence in number 6, the duty to yield rests entirely with the operator. So I think it implies that it's not only yield, but as I understand it, pedestrians and bike users have an obligation not to be like in the middle of the lane arbitrarily, or like 4 bicycles across in the traveled portion of the highway. And my only comment is that this seems very much, I don't see that that's addressed here, if that makes sense.
Right. I would like to add to that. When I got this via email, I noted that I would foresee an amendment to the resolution to the effect that bicyclists should not ride more in greater numbers abreast than 2 abreast. The state law allows 2, not 3, not 4. And some bicyclists, there's always a bad apple or two. Some bicyclists have chosen to do a kind of a critical mass thing by riding 4, 5, or even 6 abreast to say, hey, this is our road. And so while we are reminding people of basic principles of sharing the road, I would encourage us to amend this to say, to strike the first sentence of number 6, leave the rest intact, and to add an item number 7 to remind us that pedestrians and bicyclists likewise have a responsibility to follow state law and to safely use the road. That's just my 2 cents. Any other comment from the select board? Jeff?
So I would point out that there are times when it's important for a cyclist in particular to claim the lane. So like, my road would be a good case in point. I live on Heinsberg Road, and there are some blind curves. And the danger is with poor shoulders. No offense to Pete. It's just they're difficult roads to maintain the shoulders, particularly after a heavy rainfall. So what scares me, and it scares me frequently on a summer day when I'm sitting on my deck watching people bicycle by, is when people try to shoot the gap between the cyclist and an oncoming car. And one way to avoid that, or to make it much harder, is for the cyclists to claim the lane so that they cannot pass on a double yellow line going up the hill around a corner, or on a bridge, for example. Our bridges are pretty narrow, Cochran Road's different. Plenty of sight distance on a lot of Cochran Road,
But this is just in general. This isn't Cochran Rd specific,
general.
right?
So, I just point out that that's a time when I would claim the road,
right?
And I would encourage 2 abreast to claim the road.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm just going to jump in and say, for I think a 6-month period of my life, my bicycle was my method of commuting from downtown Burlington to rural Williston every day. So I'm familiar. I wouldn't do it today. Not only due to my age, I wouldn't do it today, even at that age.
Rural Williston.
But I had a very strong personal sense of when it was appropriate and when it was not. And frankly, there were many times that I was in the lane going the same speed as the cars. If I'm going 35 and a 35, booking, that that was viable. What I'm addressing is what I have seen behavior which does not seem driven by safety, but more a declaration that I don't have to share the road with you. You have to share the road with me. And when I've asked people like their opinions about things, I have heard more than 1 or 2 stories like that. And it could be bad apple, and I don't want to get caught up in the bad apple. But I do believe that in terms of responsible pedestrians, ridership, horses, dogs, that there is also a way to be safe, and that we want people to be safe to each other and not fall sway into you need to accommodate my preference versus my need for safety. And I've seen personally some of that.
And Lisa, I apologize. You had your hand up and I didn't call on you.
I did. Okay, that's okay. I think everything has been said here.
Okay. I want to add a little bit more before I start calling on our public. On Sunday morning, I was in the car with my wife heading home from church, and directly in front of Alan Knoll's house, there was a bicyclist heading east, and there was a car coming toward us. And I slowed almost to a stop And my wife said, what are you doing? And I said, there's a bicyclist here. There's a car there. I cannot safely give him
There you go.
a reasonable amount of space. That's basically state law. And she's like, it is. And my
There
wife
you
is not a dumb woman at all. But it's just you take for granted, you just shoot that gap.
Yeah.
And I think we should, as part of Francis Churchill's suggestion of education, I think it is important that we remind people, if you cannot safely give the bicyclist a safe amount of room, so that your slipstream, we probably, all of us who've bicycled have had a car come by giving us like 6 inches of room.
Right.
The wind almost knocks you over.
Yeah.
If you can't give somebody that space, you should hold up until you can. And I think that's an education issue because most people, I think, just literally don't know that. It goes against their instinct. I'm going to start calling them public now, or Pete. Pete, you're not public. You're part of the family. Pete, go ahead.
Oh,
Where did he go?
He got shot.
Pete, come back.
Oh, he disconnected himself.
He's in the upper right.
Pete, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Question backs up one item about the women's run. The roads that you're closing or that you approved, one of them is Thompson Road, and this is for almost 2 hours. Is that correct?
On Sunday. On a Sunday.
Right. Well, Thompson Road's a dead end road with a nursing home at the end of it. And also it's the town's fuel source for rescue and fire. So, I mean, I don't know if the closure means just the local traffic can go up and down it, or is it physically blocked off? That's my question.
Hillary is here. She can respond.
Hi.
Perfect. Hi, Hillary.
We have volunteers who close the road, but we always let the residents go. It's more a matter of managing the traffic flow. And the 2 hour period really, once the runners start, then the road is open again for the 20 minutes. We had a finisher last year in 19 minutes. But other than that, it's only about half an hour closer to the end of the time when the cluster of middle of the road runners are coming through that it's impassable. Other than that, it's just a matter of waiting a couple of minutes until there's an opening.
I kind of figured that. I didn't see any residents from Thompson Road there, and I'm like, hope they don't get all excited when this happens on Sunday. But
We've had a couple of people get excited, but our volunteers are usually pretty nice and help people understand it's just going to be a minute.
yep, I know the turkey trot kind of does the same thing from that same area, and that seems to work out. So no, I kind of figured. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Pete. Thanks, Hillary. Alan.
I have one potential addition, and that is the problem of passing bicycles in line as opposed to abreast. So passing 1 or 2 bicycles is much easier than passing 8 or 10 bicycles in a pace line. And I mostly get around by bicycle, but I had the experience of driving my car when one of the tour groups was leaving the Round Church area and heading east on Cochran Road. And they were just strung out in a line of, 2 or 3 dozen. And where do you get enough sight distance to pass that many people? And one time when I was riding around in Quebec, I noticed that they had a rule that you could not have more than 6 bicycles in line. And this was so that cars could reasonably get in and out around them within reasonable sight distance. And so I would just suggest adding something like that. That's all.
Okay, Lisa.
Hi, yeah, I think this is really nice. On that number 6, where it says cars are entirely responsible for yielding. I have 2 thoughts on that. One is I walk on the road almost every day. Pedestrian can't yield. There's a lot of places on Cochran Road where there's a guardrail or that it drops off. A car can yield and there won't be an accident. A pedestrian doesn't have that. A walker can't yield to a car. So I don't think we can equally make vulnerable users responsible for yielding. But I understand the idea that there are rules around how many people abreast you should be walking and riding, and that you should stay on the side of the road. So maybe just instead of saying entirely responsible, it should be that the motor vehicles are primarily responsible for yielding. And not say that they're equally responsible, because they're clearly not. They clearly can't be.
Lisa, you make an excellent point. However, if sometimes people make themselves vulnerable, there are a couple of couples, I don't know who they are, who like to dog walk. I mean, lots of people like to dog walk on Cochran Road, but these two like to take up the entire lane. And if you come up behind them, they flip you off. And those are the people that, at that point, it's on them to remember to share the road. But the vast majority of pedestrians, I mean, I've been one, are walking as close as they can to the shoulder. And as you know, there's not much shoulder on Cochran Road. This is not, of course, entirely about Cochran Road, but there is some education to be done on the part of the cyclists and walkers who decide to be confrontational. Susan.
Yeah, education, I agree.
Sorry, Lisa, finish up. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, education is one thing, but in terms of responsibility, I just feel like, and that's why I don't want to say it entirely. I'm fine with removing the word entirely, but primarily, I still suggest that should be for motor vehicles.
Okay, sorry about that. Susan, go ahead.
In the Transportation Committee meeting, Francis used the term, rather than share the road, it's I share the road. So that there was this education that we all have that responsibility. And he was talking about, doing some lawn signs and some other kinds of things to do some education. So my question to Nick is, did you have a thought about how this was going to be shared and presented to the public, and how people would be educated to these list of things?
Thanks for the question. Definitely support that concept, that initiative of a public awareness campaign. The nature of this proposal was just asking for a non-binding resolution from the select board to get this exact kind of discussion started.
Okay, Kara?
I really agree with a lot of what you all have been saying, like Lisa's comment about primarily. I think the issue that Bard brought up, though, if you all are going to start at the beginning of this and tell them what they should wear, the vulnerable people, like the bicyclers and the walkers and joggers, then I think it's okay to tell them how many wide they should go safely, and that 2 is by law allowed. I think you just need to, if we're reminding everybody we're supposed to share the road, then we should remind them of the law as well, which is no more than 2 bicyclists abreast. And that I think the issue that Lisa was talking about is possibly not to hinder traffic. There's a difference between needing room on the road to walk, and I agree with what Jeff Forward had said, that people don't always have a good shoulder, but there's a difference between walking in the middle of the lane, like you said, Jay, versus walking on the side of the lane. So I think in hindering traffic intentionally is what you're talking about, and some kind of language that bicyclists should be no more than 2 wide, and that walkers should also be the similar thing. I've come across joggers that are going 4 wide as well. And I mean, I really respect that they're out there. It's just, I fear the younger and the older drivers that might not have as quick reaction time when they come up around them on that curve, like Jeff is saying, and things like that. So if this is the intent is to remind everybody what they should or shouldn't be doing, then I think you really need to put some numbers out there for them and say that you may not intentionally hinder traffic. I mean, if you're seeing that's happening to you, Jay, then it's happening to other people as well.
Okay, Jeff?
So I would propose that if we want to make modifications to this tonight, fine. I agree with the primarily as opposed to entirely. I'm not clear on what your additional item 7 was.
I can, actually, it doesn't need to be item 7. It can be a slight change to item 2. I would simply in item 2 say, add a comma at the end, no more than 2 abreast.
Okay, so I would support that, and I would support using this encouraging the Transportation Committee to use this resolution to start their discussions with the campaign on a share the road campaign and come back to us with an update.
Okay, Jack. Or John.
John, Jack Jr., I guess.
Okay.
Practical
Sorry.
concern with this, 8 feet of clearance. I drive a standard 1/2-ton truck. It's 8.5 feet wide. A lot of our roads are 22 feet wide. I measured Heinsberg Road. So if there's someone beyond the midpoint of one lane, I can't pass them. So if there's 2 bicyclists side by side, I'm going to follow them indefinitely. And those are major roads. On some of our smaller roads like Kenyon Road, Mayo Road, Dugway Road, I may not be able to pass, following the letter of this, pass a pedestrian on the side of the road.
Yeah, I think the law is 4 feet. I know Chief Herrick.
The law is 4 feet.
I think the law
That's
is 4
correct.
feet.
But this says 8.
Yeah, it does, but this really wouldn't change the law. The law would still be 4. And we can't change that law.
Right.
8 is rather wide, John.
Right, I would actually encourage us to avoid confusing people. Even though I'd love it to have 8, I think we should change number 3 to say 4. Hillary, you had your hand up?
Yes, it kind of goes with what you're talking about.
So you should come up for the.
Oh. Just on the point of educating the public, in New Hampshire along State Route 10, that's a road that gets a lot of bike traffic. There's an educational campaign, and I don't know if it's a state law, but indicating a certain distance compared to a certain speed limit. So for example, if the speed limit's 30, you need to have, you will know this, sort of the Transportation Committee, I'll just say 4 feet. But if the speed limit's 55, then you need to have 8 feet. You get the point of what I'm saying, right? Okay, so just educating people about how to share the road.
Okay, so I am going to bring up a copy in Microsoft Word so that we can actually mark this up, because I'm getting a sense that people would be interested in maybe doing that. Also, we have a comment from, yeah, if you could come up to the mic and identify yourself.
Hi, my name is Leland Young and I live in Cochran Rd. I really appreciate the thought that's being put into this, and also the comments from other members of the community. And I just want to sort of reinforce what I see as the value of this, which is asking the select board in its position as leaders of the town to make a stand on this, because it's a little bit different from an educational campaign. And the leadership is also not just about repeating what the state law is, but about saying, here's what we feel is a good way for us all to coexist on the road. And having heard the discussion, I feel confident that in the end, it's going to be something that will be of benefit to all the users of the road. I feel like part of the discussion around reminding the vulnerable users, so the non-vehicular users, what their responsibilities are, particularly in terms of limiting how much space they take up on the road. I worry that it invites harassment of users from motor vehicle drivers who feel entitled to the use of the road. And I say that because I've been observing comments coming through Front Porch Forum, also that I've heard in meetings here from people who feel like anything that impedes or inconveniences them in any way when they're driving a vehicle is should be against the law or should be condemned. And I just feel like it's a bit of a dangerous trend to have part of the population feeling like the other part of the population that's using the road in a different way is in the wrong. So I have concerns about adding things like no more than 2 abreast, or, you know, can't take up more than whatever amount of the road, because sometimes users need to protect their position on the road in order to ensure their safety. And I wouldn't want an action like that to be construed as something that should be corrected in the moment, you know, user to user on the road with, you know, nasty language or swerving or honking or all the horrible things that people who use the road without a steel cage around them are, you know, sort of vulnerable to. And then finally, I just want to say that I would like to add something here, a note that just says that we all agree to use the road with deference and civility, so that everybody feels welcome on the roads. And that as a wrapper to all of this, you know, whether you feel inconvenienced or whether you felt like somebody should have given you an extra foot when they passed you, in the end, we expect deference and kindness or civility from all of our neighbors and visitors to our town.
Okay, one real quick thing, the state law is no more than 2 abreast.
I'm sure it is, but sometimes a cyclist needs to ride in the middle of the road in
No,
order to
that's
protect
not,
their position.
cyclists can ride in the middle of the road.
Sure.
If you can't have 3 cyclists side by side.
But you also can't have a vehicle that doesn't yield to cyclists, and sometimes
Vehicle
you have
operator
that.
has something to do also, but state law is the cyclist cannot. be
I'm not contesting what the law is. I'm just saying, like, I think that in terms of a leadership statement, I worry about inviting harassment.
So I don't think this is ready to vote on. I think we're still getting substantially different comments. These are like brand new, we're going in so many different directions. I don't think that it being 9-10 p.m., we should spend half an hour wordsmithing this to the degree that we are today. I think we should delegate this to another group, take some of the principles we put forth today and put it back out there. It is, I will just say my position as select board, I want to see something like number 7 at the top. And I would like this to be balanced across everybody's responsibility, recognizing the unique risk and responsibility of vehicle operators due to their risk to vulnerable users. But that's just my perspective.
Okay, Lisa?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Leland about the leadership aspect of it. You know, on number 3, yeah, we could change it to 4 feet because that's the law, but then we shouldn't say Richmond encourages it. We should say the law states you must yield 4 feet of clearance, and it's a different kind of document then. So yeah, I agree to you know, deferring.
One person who's got his hand up who hasn't had a chance to speak yet, and then we can go to call the motion. Dan, if you'd quickly share.
Yeah, no, Lisa took my point, just that if we're going to have a resolution, not to just reiterate state law, otherwise we might as well say, you know, you shouldn't drive under the influence as well, you know. So I agree. If we're going to have it 4 feet, don't have it. But if we're going to have it 6 feet, have it. And for the Jack Juniors who can't abide by it, you know, that's fine. This is just an encouragement that if you can do it, you can do it. And we should just be reasonable. So thanks.
But I think revisiting a future meeting is probably the way to go. Lisa?
That's fine.
Question, I mean, all this is great, but how do we get it into the minds of people? How does this get?
Well, that would be back to Francis's proposal to do a Share the Roads educational campaign in combination with CCRPC and local motion, which is something we put off until this
part of
point.
any motion that we make
Right.
on the rules, because
I
that's.
don't know if we need to make a motion to assign it to a committee, do we?
I will just observe that this is also not framed in the form of a resolution. We've passed resolutions before that are structured as resolutions. So that's really housekeeping, but that's one of the reasons I think it's not ready.
Right. So I think we can choose to take no action and simply I can send my draft to the Transportation Committee, or we can make a motion to do that. However, I would be interested in, we said, let's put Francis's share the roads thing off until this point. Do we want to vote to say, let's have a share the roads education campaign coordinated by the Transportation Committee in concert with local motion and CCRPC?
Second.
Okay. Okay, any discussion on that issue? Okay, seeing none, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, yes.
David, I.
Jeff, aye.
Bart, aye.
And Jay, aye. Did you need a moment to get that?
No, I don't think it's getting it, so
Okay,
we'll get it.
but I want to thank Nick. I want to thank everybody else who shared, because this is a subject, I don't think there's a person in Richmond who doesn't have a deep personal feeling about this.
You're probably right.
And we want to make this an inclusive community where everybody feels that they have as much right to enjoy it as anybody else. But again, to go back to that point that we added kind of at the end, we must remember to act with politeness, kindness, civility, all that good stuff.
Just a final comment, if I could, Jay.
Mhm.
Typically for, if we look at some of our previous resolutions, we often do whereas and the findings of facts that come at the front.
Yeah.
Whereas this, whereas this, and we sometimes then cite state law, cite our overarching,
That's a better organizational.
our overarching principles, and then go to we recommend. And that's just a comment about sort of housekeeping, and there are past resolutions like diversity, equity, inclusion that would offer a template.
Or even honoring Brian Cochran Siegel or. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Our next item of business relates to the All Together Now project. Essentially, the motion that is in the memo is to serve as a fiscal sponsor for All Together Now in receipt of funding from United Way of Northwest Vermont. But there's much more to it than that. Stephanie is with us tonight. She's turned on her camera. So Stephanie, tell us a little bit about All Together Now for those of us who may not be familiar with it, and then tell us about your request.
Sure, and I just want to note that in the first document, the very first paragraph is supposed to be a template for a motion, in case anyone was wondering. I wanted to make it quick and easy. All Together Now is a community health and well-being project that's come about over several years of community partners working together and the generous support of the town of Richmond and the voters of Richmond, with a $5,000 community well-being fund set up in the current year's fiscal budget, or the whatever it's called, the regular town budget. And we've used that money to move the project forward by stipending youth within the community to work on projects to help support the mental health and well-being, and which includes substance use prevention throughout the community. And we have a community resource and referral network that it does serve all 5 towns, and we're working with the other select boards, but we have a logo, a website, a software platform. We have, I think I said 6 to 10 interns that are working with us. We've surveyed all of the high school students in March around what they'd like to see different to help them with their mental health and other issues to help make things better. And that came from a promotional video that was produced by a couple of the students there, and they designed the logo that you see. So they're really working within the community. And then what's also happened this year is we do now have the support of the school district. We have school board members on our advisory team. So the school district is willing to help support this communal effort in working with the towns. They really did appreciate seeing that the town of Richmond was willing to be a kind of seed starter. And next steps is we are looking at whether or not we want to have a fiscal agent or become a 501c3, because this area, this 5-town area, is a gap area for a prevention coalition, which is to prevent substance use and serve as mental health, And for years, people have been trying to figure out how to get a prevention coalition in this area, and it's kind of keeps getting stuck. So we're really close. The school district is on board to work together, and we're just figuring out the best arrangement. And so United Way had some funds that have to be spent by June 30th. They approached us knowing that we're always very under-resourced and creative. So this funding has been approved by United Way, and all the town needs to do is approve it. So the money would be given to the town. And then basically, Josh and Connie and I work really well together in that my company is the one who's able to stipend the kids or hire on contractors. We've done this in the past because I don't have the restrictions that a municipality has. And then I invoice the town for any services if they approve the expenses, which, I send them documentation and invoices, but I have the liability insurance and the workers' comp, but not the restrictions of a municipality. So this is $10,000 to hire a contractor to get us kind of over the hump to finally form that prevention coalition. I'll stop there. I'm hoping you guys y'all got a chance to see it.
Okay, so just real quick, bureaucracy wise, I'm sharing the first paragraph from Stephanie's letter and then the draft motion from the actual memo. And they seem substantially the same with the exception that the memo does not specify the $10,000. So I'm just going to simply add.
I mean, if you want to go with Stephanie's, it's fine.
Well, it's not phrased in the form of, it's not really phrased in the form of.
Oh, I think you'd say I moved to do an agreement with all the other now. Do what you want to do. Sorry.
I think that basically accomplishes it right there. But
Yeah,
before
Go
go ahead. Bard and others will
thank
probably have comments. Bard?
I wasn't clear on this. So a temporary contract position from the town of Richmond?
No, nope. So this temporary contract position, it will be Hartsfield Health Systems will do this. It's a consultant, so it'll be a subcontractor. We did this with another grant before. So I will actually be, I'm not even hiring them. Like they're a consultant, they're a subcontractor. That's why the amount is so high. There's no benefits, there's no taxes. It's all on them. They have to be able to be a independent contractor. We're not hiring them. So they're responsible for all of their taxes and expenses, no benefits. But my company is responsible for all of that hiring and grant reporting, everything else. And then I invoice the town of Richmond for any expenses incurred in relation to this project. So therefore it takes all the work off of Josh and Connie except for paying an invoice, or the entire town, I should say, select board.
So essentially the town is the fiscal agent, but all the work is done outside the town. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, other comments?
Should we just say where those $10,000 are coming from? I mean, it does say it up above.
It's from
so I
United
know.
Way.
Yeah, is it clear?
Oh.
there? Yeah,
Okay, I will cheerfully add.
United Way funds? There you go.
Okay, so I have at the bottom of the window, I have a proposed motion. Somebody needs to make it though.
So,
If you're prepared to.
so can I ask another question?
Please do.
So Stephanie, this is, you basically need to spend this $10,000 within 3 months, right?
Yes.
Okay, and that will be to hire somebody for 20 hours a week.
Yes.
Is that how I'm understanding that?
Correct.
And so that's like a contracted staff person for 20 hours a week that you will be hiring. You'll be hiring somebody to do that.
Yes, it'll be a consultant. Yeah.
Okay, and 3 months is a pretty quick turnaround here. So, do you have somebody in mind? Do you know what they're going to be doing? I mean, it takes us much longer to hire somebody than.
I know. Yeah, the job description is attached in your materials, and word's already been spread amongst the Prevention Center of Excellence network. And we have a couple people who've shown interest. We've pretty much already spread the word. The application deadline is this coming Friday, and we've heard from a couple people. So yeah, I know that in this hiring economy that seems very tight, but we feel pretty confident. Yeah.
Okay, so that works out to be about $50 an hour or so. For 3 months.
It's Connie did the math. It's 45, but I think that it's hard. Josh and Connie and I all talked about this. It's yes and no. I think it's a short-term consultant. Again, just it's not apples and oranges, or it is apples and oranges, not apples to apples, because no benefits, they have to pay their own taxes. It's really a consulting arrangement. There's nothing else. It's not, I don't know. But I think it's more that we're being given $10,000 and we are on the precipice of getting a prevention coalition to help with substance abuse and mental health for this town, which has been a need for many, many years. And we've built a lot of coalition support from community partners.
So, on the one hand, $50 an hour is a lot for an individual, but it's not much for a consultant.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you do have to be careful of running into labor laws about contract work. So I don't know, I mean, I think, this is worthwhile, but you just have to be careful in how you allocate.
Okay.
Kara?
First of all, Stephanie, thank you. I really hope the select board moves forward with this. My only recommendation on the motion, if you don't, my only recommendation is that after it's funds to be at the very last sentence, at the very last line, funds to be paid to, and put the name of your business.
Mm-hmm.
No, the first, after the United Way funds to be, instead of used by, it's funds to be paid to and used for short-term consultants for All Together Now.
Right.
To support, right? So that's
the
point is the money's getting paid to you to use for short-term consultants. And I don't think that's an issue at all. When Jeff thought there might be an issue with labor law, not for a short-term consultant that does that for a living, it's not an issue at all, as long as it's a contractual situation. I 100% support this, but it needs to be clear about who the money's going to, how it flows.
What's the official name of your entity?
Yeah, I just put it in the chat, and it's weird. Like, I wish it could just say All Together Now, but you're right. From a very tight auditing perspective, I guess we do have to say how it flows, right? Because until we become a 501c3,
correct,
I am the agent. Yeah.
Yes, it's to be used by, it's to be paid to and used by you for the purpose of.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, for the purpose of supporting All Together Now prevention activities in the community.
Yes.
Right.
For the purpose of supporting. So right, instead of it says and, just right there, for the purpose of supporting.
Right.
Beautiful. I really think this, I hope they do this. Thank you.
Right. Thanks. No, that's a good edit, Kara, because I always want to make sure, like, I send all the documents, so I don't want it to look like I'm holding anything, like I'm not making any money.
Exactly. Cover yourself. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, select board, the motion as we've wordsmithed it is as follows. Does anybody have any further questions, comments, concerns, or editing?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion from Dave
Second.
Sanders, and a second from Bart Hill.
I should probably just read it.
The motion.
Wait, you didn't include for the purpose of hiring a consultant. The consulting is, if that's the name of her business, she needs to hire a consultant.
For the purpose of hiring a consultant, there you go.
Yes, you forgot that. I'm sorry. I saw. Yes.
Support all.
To support. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I saw consultant and thought it was the consultant.
Okay, so David, do you agree to the amendment?
Yes, I do.
Jay, this is David.
Oh, I'm sorry, you made it first.
Enter
No,
into
I'm
a
second.
funding memorandum of agreement with United Way of Northwest Vermont, which will allow for the town of Richmond to serve as the fiscal sponsor for $10,000 in United Way funds paid to and to be used.
And thank you.
Be used by Hartsfield Health Systems Consulting for the purpose of hiring a consultant to support All Together Now and its prevention activities in the community.
Does Bart ever repeat my second?
Actually, had to actually read it out loud to make sure it made sense.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
David, aye.
Jeff, aye. Bart, aye.
And Jay, aye.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I mean, Stephanie and
Yeah,
everybody
well,
else. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you all. I'll write those better in the future.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Okay. Getting out of my email again.
Racing on to item L.
Okay. We have a series of what may be relatively short action items. The first is probably going to take the longest. The library, as we discussed at the last meeting, has requested $150,000. And we have to understand, $150,000 is not locked in to be spent. It would be, you can go ahead and stop. They have put in for a grant, the Bruhn grant, for the exterior of the library for renovations and repairs that are very sorely needed. And they have indicated to us that while a match is not absolutely required, the presence of matching funds can significantly strengthen the application. And the ARPA committee at its last meeting voted to recommend to the select board that the $150,000 of ARPA money be earmarked, I guess is the word. I wouldn't say formally allocated, because if they don't get the grant, we wouldn't put the money in.
Right.
Is there any discussion of this match and the potential use of ARPA funds? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion?
So I have one question.
Oh, please do.
On the grant application, it's calling for $100,000.
Oh, I thought that Dana had come back and asked for the greater amount, you know?
She was clear that she wanted 150. I was also a little unclear with the way the grant was written between the two different projects. It didn't seem very clear in the writing of the grant that it was 150. But I thought maybe I was missing something.
It would appear to me that is explained by item 8 and 9. 8 is grant amount requested is 100. Total project cost is 248,200. Different 248,200 minus 100 is roughly 150.
Yeah,
Okay.
And I think they're asking for that 150 kind of like regardless of whether or not they get the grant.
Well, I had an exchange of emails with Dana, and I'm not absolutely sure. If they don't get the grant, I don't think they want the money. I can check my email again, but I believe that was a sense of what she said. Did you get that same email?
Yeah, I mean, they're looking at a few different ways to try to fund it.
It's unfortunate.
We can put this
Dana-
off for another meeting to get
And
Well, the grant deadline, yeah, I guess it's already passed.
the grants are.
they've already filed, yeah.
Yeah, and I think my confusion was that she was talking about two different projects, right? So we were talking about phase 1 of the project that we're doing right now. And then phase 2, total amount is 100. This 248. I think that's for both combined, but again, I think I was missing a piece of the application, or maybe that 248 is for just phase 2, which is what I
Okay,
think
let
the
me,
grant is for.
I do have an exchange of emails with Dana. I will pull them up, or pull them up on my own screen.
I have a suggestion, Jay. Since we have not yet received the grant, we might modify a motion or state a motion to approve the commitment of use of funds up to this,
Yeah.
depending on approval of the Bruhn grant. Which
Right.
sort of, because if and when we get the grant, we have yet another decision to make. This is to
Right.
commit.
So the motion and the memo, we just really have to swap the word commit instead of approve.
And also, like, it's not a requirement of the grant that there is a match. So even I think that, like Roy put in that email, she put in the grant that she had requested funding, not that it was 100% committed to.
Mhm.
So I think there's some nuance there where it's not like a grant where if you get it, you have to put 150 in. If you get the grant, they'd like to see it, but it's not a full requirement.
But it would have to be paid for somehow, because it's not going to be the entire amount.
True. We'd have to find the money somehow for the.
And this would be, either way, this would seem to be a use of.
Really, that's what they're asking for. Lori was asking to not. Of course, we don't need to make a decision now until we get the grant.
Or we could do, as Bart said, just change it to commit should the town get the grant. I'm happy either way. Do people want to make a motion?
let me find it. How about this? I'm gonna wing it a little bit. Move to support the use of up to $150,000 in ARPA funds in the Bruhn grant application for repairs to the exterior of the library.
This is David, I'll second.
Okay, we have motion from Bart Hill and a second from David Sander to support the use of up to $150,000 in combination with the Bruhn grant.
And so my language sort of thoughtful because it says it's for the purpose of the grant application. And then when we get to the point of getting the grant, we might say, hey, we have ARPA might be the best source, or it might be something else.
Okay,
Is my thinking.
sure. Any other comment? Okay, seeing none, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
David, aye.
Jeff, aye. Bart, aye.
And Jay, aye. Our
Can
next
I just
item
say
of
thank you, guys? Jay, can I just say thank you? I don't mean to interrupt you, but I appreciate that hard work. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Our next item relates to the ongoing question of VTrans establishing a no parking area on Route 2 in front of the Richmond Family Medicine Office. This has been discussed multiple times and we've heard from many points of view. Our next step would be to make a formal request to the VTrans Traffic Committee. That request is in the packet and we do have a draft motion. Would anybody like to make any comments or ask any questions about this item of business?
This is Bart. I'd like to move to submit a request to the VTrans Traffic Committee to implement a no parking zone on the north side of US Route 2, known as West Main Street, and Richmond between the driveway to Richmond Family Medicine at 30 West Main Street and the driveway to Our Lady of the Holy Rosary Church at 64 West Main Street.
We have a motion from Bart Hill. Do we have a second?
This is David, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from Bart Hill and a second from David Sander to submit the request to the VTrans Traffic Committee to establish the no parking zone between Richmond Family Medicine and Our Lady of the Holy Rosary. Any further discussion? Seeing none, state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
David, aye.
Jeff, aye. Bart, aye.
And Jay, aye. Okay, our next item of business is again a follow-up to previous meetings. It is a consideration of approving the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund loan application. The bond vote for the project passed on town meeting day. So this is the application to DWSRF for the final assignment construction phase of the project. Important to note that while this is a bond that would be paid back by water customers, the bonding and borrowing authority does rest with the select board. This was also in the Water and Sewer Commission agenda this evening, and we endorsed it. There is a draft motion in the packet. Does anybody have any questions about this request, this item?
Jay, this is David. I move to approve the DWSRF application for a water line replacement on Tilden Avenue and portions of Bridge Street and Cochran Road.
Lisa seconds.
We have a motion from David Sander and a second from Lisa Miller to approve the DWSRF application for water line replacement on Tilden, Bridge, and Cochran. Seeing no hands up, let's go ahead and vote. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
David, aye.
Jeff, aye. Bart, aye.
And Jay, aye. Thank you. Our next item is possibly another quick one. The national opioid settlement with Teva, Allergan, CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart. The state of Vermont has signed on as a participant in the suit, and towns in Vermont have the option of signing on to it themselves. We can direct the money to be paid to the town or send it to the state's overall effort. There is detailed information about this in your packet. The theoretical goal behind this is that recipients of the money should use this for opioid abatement, for educational and treatment and what have you. I don't believe there's a requirement that we do it for that. And I think in the past, other settlements like this, towns have used this as a windfall. I would hope that if we get the money that we would use it in some fashion more commensurate with what it's meant to be used for, but that's a later discussion. Does anybody have any questions or comments about our participating in this settlement?
I just want to say I've been on the select board for over 9 years now, and I've been very struck with the cost to the taxpayers due to police time and resources being spent. And also the cost to the society as a whole in Richmond with crimes driven due to opioid addictions. So I'm glad to see some potential retribution coming back. Because the citizens of Richmond have paid dearly due to this problem.
Yeah, Jeff.
Yeah, I hope that these companies get what's coming to them. It's despicable what they have done to our country as a whole. My only question in regards to us is will it cost us anything to participate?
No.
No, then I hope we get lots of money from them because they cost everybody in the country lots of money.
We are already enrolled in the 2 other settlements and we've received some money from those, and I think future item is follow up on what exactly can we use that money for. And I forget exactly how much money we're getting from both of those, but it's I think around 15,000 give or take.
We should reiterate that the defendants of the suit are Teva, Allergen, CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart.
So Jay, I'd like to move this. I will just first observe that the true story behind how this opioid crisis emerged is far worse than most people think.
Yes. The makers of OxyContin incentivize doctors to hand this stuff out like candy.
That said, this is Bart. I'll move to approve entering into the national opioid settlements with Teva, Allergan, CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart, and to appoint town manager Josh Artisan as the duly authorized representative.
A motion from Bart Hill. Do we have a second?
This is David. I'll second.
We have a motion from Bart Hill and a second from David Sander to approve entering into the national opioid settlement. Any further discussion?
Hand up.
Oh, we have a hand up from Kara. Kara, by all means.
Thank you. Thank you. I just would want to have it definitely, like you all said, have it go to the town, because I think we can manage our resources better than potentially what they're doing at the state level. And that you just saw all together now is just in front of you. They're trying to form a nonprofit to help our town specifically, so that, and just like David had said about the police officers spending a lot of time, I really think if you enter into this, that it should be clear that we are seeking it for directly to the town and not for the state.
Okay, Stephanie?
Thanks for clapping.
Oh, you're just clapping. Okay.
I was clapping, but I'll have data next month or in a couple of months to show you from the kids. It's heartbreaking what they're all going through too. So, but I agree with what Jeff and Bart said. Thank you very much.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
David, aye.
Jeff, aye. Bart, aye.
And Jay, aye. Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is for 3 liquor licenses. We have requests from Stone's Throw Pizza, Pine Martin LLC doing business as Stone's Throw Pizza, for Vermont Fine, and for Richmond Mobile Mart. Pine Barton doing business as Stone's Throw is requesting a first and second class license, which first class is to serve beer and wine on site, second class is to sell beer and wine to be consumed off premises. Vermont Fine LLC is requesting a first and third class, which means they want to be able to serve beer and wine and spirits on site, but not sell to be consumed off premises. And Richmond Mobile Mart is requesting a second class license to be sold beer and wine off premises, and also a tobacco license. This would require 3 separate motions. They are in the memo. Is there any discussion of these? Okay.
This is Bard. I'll take them one at a time. I move to approve first and second class liquor licenses for Pine Martin LLC doing business as Stone's Throw Pizza.
Motion from Bard.
This is David. I'll second.
Motion from Bard, second from David Sander to approve Pine Martin LLC Stone Throw Pizza first and second class liquor license. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
David, aye.
Jeff, aye. Bart, aye.
And Jay, aye.
This is Bart. I'd like to move to approve first and third class liquor licenses for Vermont Fine LLC.
A motion from Bard.
Lisa seconds.
Okay, we have motion from Bard, second from Lisa Miller to approve first and third class liquor licenses for Vermont Fine LLC. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
David, aye.
Jeff, aye.
Bart, aye.
And Jay, aye.
And lastly, I move to approve a second class liquor license and a tobacco license for RMM Enterprises doing business as Richmond Mobile Mart.
A motion from Bard. Do we have a second?
This is David. I'll second.
A motion from Bard Hill, a second from David Sander to approve a second-class liquor license and a tobacco license for RMM Enterprises doing business as Richmond Mobile Mart. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, I.
David, aye.
Jeff, I.
And Jay, aye. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you all. Our next item of business is consideration of approval of the local emergency operations plan. This is something we've reviewed before. There were some questions, and I'm going to turn this over to Josh to discuss.
So I have it wrong in the memo. I changed it to just an update and review of local operations plan. So I got some more information, but not all that I was hoping for by this meeting. The NIMS resource sheet, I updated that, I think, pretty thoroughly based on the guidance from CCRPC on how we classify each of our resources. And this is things like fire trucks, plow trucks, excavators. Reviewed that with our fire chief and with Pete Goslin. So I think we've got all the quantities right and everything typed in there correctly. Made a couple of updates based on feedback from the last meeting, but I'm still waiting on is feedback from the Red Cross on the updates for the schools. Jeff might be laughing because they currently have the Richmond Elementary School as a larger capacity than Campbell's Hump Middle School, which doesn't make any sense. When I look at the past surveys, and I think I looked at the surveys that were like 10 years ago. I think there was a typo probably on the square footage of the elementary school, which then led them to look at this. So I followed up again with the person who came a couple months ago to look at those schools to ask, we really need to get updated square footage and updated capacity so we can update our local emergency management plan with accurate data. So waiting on that, I think is kind of the last piece that we need here. Hopefully we'll have that by our next meeting because this really needs to be in and approved by the end of April.
Questions? Questions for Josh? Comments?
Item next time.
Okay. Our next item is an update from the Town Center and Library Building Committee. Jeff?
Try to make this quick. So how we got to where we are is way back in 1907. This committee has been formed now since I think 2018. So we've been working on this for quite some time. We've done a number of public engagements and gotten public comment. Throughout that process, we hired an architect from middle of last year or so, Black River Design. What they did is they went through the building, they interviewed all of the tenants, including the town staff, the police department, and all of the users, the users of the building, to come up with a program plan. And that included, what their needs and wants would be. What they discovered is that the police department actually drives a lot of the design because they have specialty needs. If they were to get everything they wanted, it's complicated, because a detainee processing facility, a proper one means you drive a car in with the detainee, you take them out of the car in handcuffs in a secure location, and then you bring them into the building in a secure location. What's challenging about that here is our first floor is half a story up. And so you'd have to put an addition on. And once you start putting additions on, things get a lot more complicated. They get more complicated because of zoning, and they get more complicated because of size and how you attach it to the building. So lot coverage comes into question. There's a lot of issues around that. As we and the architect Scott Lovin, they came up with several very creative ideas of how to accomplish getting everything that we want on this site. But the police department in particular, to get everything that they need and want, is somewhere around 3,500 to 4,000 square feet, which is a lot. Heinsberg, just as a comparison, Heinsberg is about similar size. They built a new police department. 2014, I think it was. And their police department is about, it's less than 2,500 square feet for their office space. So what we concluded in our meeting last week was that we're not excited about presenting this to the public as a police department / renovation of this building. You know, what our initial charge was to look at this building. And so, we've scaled back. What we want to do is we want to look at the footprint of this building. Not everybody gets everything they want, in life. The police department for so many years have not had a detainee processing facility. And, you know, the future of our police department is in flux right now. So rather than wait until we figure that out, or drive this design based on the needs and wants, and no denigration to the police department. What we've decided is to try to live within the footprint of this building as best we can. We can make the police department functional, you know, much better than it is now, because it is not very functional now, no matter how many police officers you have down there. It's not a functional space. And so we have directed the architects to come back to us with several iterations of how to fit the program more or less within this footprint.
Mhm.
We may need to do an enclosed staircase because our fire escape is not code.
Right.
Mechanicals, we may need to find a place for mechanicals, but we're not talking anymore about, you know, building 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 square feet for the police department on this site, which would be difficult to do anyway.
Mhm.
So what we would like to do is we would like to sit down with the architects again. They're going to present us with a number of different options. We want to bring back to you 2 or 3, explain which ones we think are the most appropriate, and then at that time, get your input.
Mhm.
So we're not making any decisions. We're trying to make this easier on the select board because we're doing the work, and we would like to present to you where we stand in about a month. So I would make that as a future agenda item to get your input on what we've done to date and where we go from there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Questions? Okay.
Just a really brief comment. We have wrestled with this question of police force size and habitation for a while. One follow-up question, is the processing site the same as a Sally Port?
Yes.
Do we know how many small police departments in Vermont have Sally Ports at this point?
I do not know that. I know that we are the smallest police department in the county right now.
And the only reason I ask is that something that we wrestled with before, that, you know, it's certainly ideal to have a Sally Port, but recognizing also, last I knew, a large number of departments function without them, even though clearly it would be better. So I think your description of there are times where there are sacrifices want to have versus need to have is kind of an interesting dynamic for all of us in this.
What we concluded is, up until now, what you know, when it was initially renovated, they made a little detainee cell in the building. It's not really very functional, but it worked at the time. And going forward, you know, there are lots of different decisions we might make relative to police. We might contract out for services, and processing might be one of those services. With either Williston, the state police, or Hyper. You know, we could do that, but that's not a decision we've made yet.
Mhm.
And so the Town Center Committee doesn't want to be the body that makes that decision. What we want to do is we want to deal with this footprint in such a way that whatever we do in here can be modified in the future. You know, and maybe the police department doesn't live in this building in the future. That's a possibility. So, you know, we don't want to preclude that, but, you know, we don't think we can make it really, like the Sally Port addition options added literally millions to the project. So we wanted to take that decision out of this process and see what we can do with this building. And the coolest part about this, and I think they're all gonna really like this, the coolest part about this is it's not just about the building, it's about campus. And so that, you know, one of the key aspects is how do you get from here to the library without walking through a parking lot? You know,
Sky Bridge.
there's actually a really nice green space. So they figured out how to do green space, a driveway with a crosswalk, parking lot in behind, and we get more parking spaces out of that because of our parking right now is so inefficiently designed. Which is like awesome, more parking and more green space. If we don't put a police station right in the middle of it.
We could put a corridor through the Sally Port.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, well, Jeff, thank you very much for that update. It is 9 minutes until 10. We have one item on the agenda except for purchase orders, warrants, et cetera, and the executive session. I think we can do it. Discussion of strategic items to add to the select board calendar. This is, you know, your chance to say, I think in July, we should do this. In June, we should do this. So the floor is open.
Well, one comment, and this is a little bit out of our direct control, is the ongoing, this brings up the conversation we just had, regionalization, including a re-engagement with Heinsberg about possible partnerships around policing. That sort of was put on hold for a while, and I'm not sure what the right time frame on that is, but and we don't need to nail it down now, but I think it should be on the list. And
I think that'd be like a July-ish timeframe to check back in. They were about a 6-month process back in January.
Yeah, and I don't know if I can pick a specific date. You know, for like the town center will be that as well. What we anticipate is we will need to come to the select board probably several times. But, you know, we can give you an overview. The plans are very preliminary at the moment. We can give you an overview in May. And then we're hoping for a bond vote in November. So we want to present things to the select board, you know, through that time frame, up to the point where we need to warn a bond vote.
One other thing I'd add is, you know, to a great degree, water sewer issues belong with the Water Sewer Commission. So I realize those are consuming Josh's time and other people's time, but don't really belong, I think, in strategic planning here. That said, we talked about police, maybe fire as well. Think about the future of fire in the context of workforce, the building, like where do we want it to be?
That's the very
10 or
good point.
20 years from now.
Right. As most of you, if not all of you know, our fire department is rapidly aging. They're aging out basically, and they have had very little luck recruiting new members. If there's something we can do about that, I mean, one of the questions is, do we go and start employing some professional firefighters?
That is a trend.
No. Any other strategic items you'd like to add to the list? Lisa, you've got this thoughtful look.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's just a look.
Maybe we had ARPA
That's good.
decision on there at some point, summerish.
That sounds like a good idea. I think by then things will gel.
What was that last one?
Making some ARPA decisions.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm suggesting that.
Okay. So the moment I say, let's move on, somebody's gonna have an idea.
Yeah.
So feel free. The next item on the agenda is approval of minutes, warrants, and purchase orders. We can start with the minutes. Does anybody have any corrections, additions, deletions, or other changes to the minutes of March 20th? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll move, this is Lisa, I'll move we approve the minutes as written last meeting.
Okay, we have a motion from Lisa.
This is David, I'll second.
We have a motion from Lisa Miller, a second from David Center to approve the minutes of March 20th. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
David, aye.
Hard eye.
And Jay, aye. Okay, we do have one purchase order tonight, which is a fairly interesting one. Do you want to talk about it?
We got two.
Oh, we've got two. I'm sorry.
All right, I can bring them up.
Yeah, if you'll bring those.
One's interesting, one's maybe not so interesting.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
You want to start with the not so interesting?
Yeah,
Okay.
the one we were emailing about earlier.
Oh, that's not so interesting one? Okay, I thought that was the interesting one.
Okay, just do one, damn it.
Let's go in numerical order. We'll start with,
Can you move the?
yeah, I'm gonna try to get this out of the way. We will go with the loan first, because that's purchase order 4396. This is a loan that has a couple of items on it. It's got a 2005 fire truck. It's also got the Jericho Road interest, which is 48% highway and 52% water and sewer. So water and sewer actually signed their portion of this earlier in the meeting.
What?
Last meeting.
There's no excuse for that.
Anyway, so the full amount of this is $17,962 and 54
I signed it on the wrong line.
With the
It's like it never
portion
happened.
being water and sewer.
So this is Bard, a motion to approve purchase order number 4396 to US Bank with the share of Select Board being the fire truck at $679.50 and the Jericho Road interest at $8295.86.
Okay, we have a motion from Bard. Do we have a second?
It's Lisa, I'll second.
We have a motion from Bard and a second from Lisa
I didn't want to
to accept purchase order 4396 for the Jericho
I do have a
Road.
question on this.
Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
So it's just for interest? Why just interest and no principal? Most loans have,
Yeah.
right?
Let me see what I think it's in the warrants too.
Unless it's staggered
Mhm.
where one payment's interest and principal and this is just interest.
Let me,
I know that's come up before.
what was this two? This was two.
4396.
No, it was US Bank.
Mhm.
I should be able to get to it.
Okay. And then just go virtually to the end.
The US Bank would be at the end then.
Yeah. A little before WB makes them. A little. We all learned how to alphabetize. We still remember it. There we go.
Well, I think I saw this too.
You
and it
just
said
hit the
just
rotate tool
interest.
up in your toolbar.
I think it said just interest on it.
Oops,
No, it was right there.
was it? I'm sorry. Yeah.
I have to second.
Okay, so right there, to the right, keep going, there you go. Oh, you don't have a licensed version. I have a licensed version. But I can probably get my licensed version copy.
Oh. So what does it say here? Blah, 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 blah.
What page is
Let's
that?
see.
124?
124.
I haven't seen the dollar figure yet.
I'm sorry about this.
I got it. I already rotated
we
mine.
go.
Here, let me share it.
Okay.
Now I'll share.
Don't have the licensed version either.
Okay, so US Bank, going to the first page of it, looks like it's there.
And it does say interest. It just says interest. So this is what I saw.
There's zero in the principal.
Yeah.
And
So
if
that-
I page down to the second page, it doesn't say anything.
So maybe that's a follow-up question. Why are these things
No,
showing
it's good.
100% interest? Where's the principal go? When do we
That
pay
could go
that?
on forever, right?
Yeah,
It literally, yeah.
Yeah, I'm
it's not
sure we're paying
adjustable.
for it separately, but.
It may just be staggered.
we need to check on it, but I think one payment is principal and one payment is interest.
It's
That
twice a
sounds-
month, like something like that.
Yeah,
I think we should vote on this, approve it, and come back next time or follow up with the
That sounds good to me.
explanation.
Okay, so it's to approve purchase order 4396 for the fire truck and Jericho Road. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
David, I.
Jeff,
Bard, aye?
And Jay, aye.
Jay,
Our
make sure you
next-
sign that on the right line.
Right.
Some idiot signed on the wrong line in the
Okay,
last.
our next item is what I call the fun one, just because it's kind of disturbing. It has to do with, it's purchase order 4427. The tranny on our 2020 International plow truck died 2 months after it went out of warranty.
Isn't that great?
So we towed it to Allegiance. Allegiance estimate was ridiculously high. We had it towed we got bids, we towed it to Rick's Towing. And the total cost to fix all that, the total amount we're asking for here is $10,165.95. Is that correct? If you've got other items up here that were,
Yeah, no, those are just the bids.
those are just the bids. Okay.
It's in there.
So this is a total cost down here, 10,165.95. Questions?
Just for clarity, what brand is truck number 2?
International.
International. Yeah, I looked at this one. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Other questions? Okay, do we have a motion to approve it?
This is Bard, motion to approve purchase order 4427 to Rick's Towing and Repair for replacing a failed transmission in International truck number 2 for an amount not to exceed $10,165.95.
We have a motion from Bard.
This is David, I'll second.
We have a motion from Bard and a second from David to approve purchase order 4427. An amount not to exceed $10,165.95. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, I.
David, I. Jeff, I.
Bard, aye.
And Jay, aye. Okay, the remaining item would be approval of the other warrants. Do you have a motion?
This is David, move to approve the warrants.
I'll second.
A motion from David, a
Lisa
second from Lisa to approve the warrants. Any questions about any of the warrants? Seeing none, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, I.
David, I.
Jeff, I.
Bard, aye.
And Jay, aye.
I saw there's one bill for the guy.
Yeah,
Visualizing
purchase order
center?
4560.
What's that?
It was a,
Life
there was a
safety center.
invoice for visualizing the town center.
You're right.
Architect doesn't put that or something.
Yeah.
So have you seen it? I mean, is it-
Right, you did include that.
So.
Did or did
I
not?
think it was
No, it's
$65,000
discussed in the memo and I forgot.
Yeah,
to
this
share it.
is, I.
Okay,
one
well,
payment.
it's-
This Bard, I'd like
Saw
to
that.
move to approve purchase order number 4560 to Life Safety Systems Incorporated for amount not to exceed $12,228 for firearm replacement and various system
Stuff.
remedies.
We have a motion from Bard. Do we have a second?
This is David, I'll second.
We have a motion from Bard Hill, a second from David Sander to approve purchase order 4560, an amount not to exceed $12,228.00. It's discussed further in your memo. Our existing alarm system is archaic to say the least, has one phone line. This would move us to a cellular system that would hope to be more water resistant.
Yeah, fill up with water.
Yeah.
Yep, and some of these were because, I mean, we replaced the phone system in the town center, so it lost a phone line, and they suggested going to 2. In the midst of that, we had a big rainstorm, water got in the box. They said, oh, it got in the box, got to replace the whole thing. And then as we were hooking up the new smoke detectors, in order to make that work, there's a retrofit that they need to make the way the detectors are set up actually work to call out to the fire department or to the monitoring system, which we then call the fire department. So we found 3 or so things in the last couple of months that we need to address with the system.
Okay, questions?
So will this, we're not doing this, but if we were to gut rehab this building, would we be able to reuse that?
I don't know if I can answer that. I'm not the alarm specialist. I don't know exactly what they would require for that. I don't see why we wouldn't be able to, because we have the pull stations connected to it. We have the smoke detectors connected to it. Even if we needed to upgrade smoke detectors and upgrade the connections, I would hope that it wouldn't be a huge expense. But
It would seem like we're replacing the brain, so a new brain
I would
arguably should be able to be
It
connected.
could be, it could be that, we do something completely different. This is actually not very much money for.
No, it's not.
Is it a simplex system?
I don't know.
What's the memo saying?
That's right.
So I'm fine with doing this, but just realize that, just like
Doesn't
if
say.
you're repairing the wiring today, the wiring might be all different,
Okay,
2 years from now.
so we have a motion to approve purchase order 4560 in amount not to exceed $12,228 for a new alarm system from Life Safety Systems. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, I.
Actually, who moved it?
Oh.
Okay, we did have a motion. Okay, and you seconded it, right? Who seconded that?
I'll second it.
Oh, I was just gonna do the same thing.
Okay, we have a motion from Bart, a second from Jeff. Now state your name and your vote.
Lisa, third, Lisa, I.
David,
It's late. It's late.
Okay. And Jay, I. Okay, before we move into our executive session, items for next agenda. The resolution on safe
Right,
road.
well up on the resolution. Yeah, I think We should get to a passing one next time.
On them. They may not be ready for them. That's probably next one. What is follow up? We don't need any follow up on the Bruhn grant right now.
No.
We need to follow up on that purchase order.
Mhm.
We'll have hopefully a finalized emergency plan.
As far as our strategic planning, you know, it might be worth trying to sketch in where this might fit on the calendars.
And see the whole.
See the whole thing and maybe, you know, spend, you know, allocate a little bit more time to think that through.
Kara?
Where are you at with your townwide reappraisal and making sure that you're getting all the data from the company, Nemrick? We met with them. It was back when June was the chair, and I didn't know if you have it confirmed that they're going to provide you with the information that we had requested.
Yeah, I talked to Lisa about that a while ago, about getting me a list of everything that we currently have. So she's aware we need a list of what's currently appraised, and we'll need an updated list on that once it's finalized. We'll have to compare with data on each individual property.
So
Because-
maybe the status report at the next meeting where we stand with the appraisal in terms of how complete are we, more or less? Are we 50, 80, 20?
Oh, no, they have to be done.
Well, yeah.
But my point is just to let you know, it was on VPR, other towns that didn't know enough to ask for the data to do the comparative, and that they were running into problems and issues. So just a good thing that we started that ball rolling in the right direction. So they won't be done. It's the values as of April 1. So I don't think they actually start to send out the new values until May, and the appeal process starts then. So I think they're still completing everything during the month of April. And then I think the final appeals are in June before you send out your tax bills in July.
So maybe a review of that timeline. And are we adhering to it?
Okay, sounds good. Okay, well, seeing other hands going up, we do have a couple of motions in the memo relating to an executive meeting to discuss a personnel issue.
This is Bart. I'd like to move to find that premature public knowledge about a personnel issue would cause the town or person to suffer a substantial disadvantage.
This is David. I'll second.
A motion from Bart and a second from David to find that premature public knowledge would cause about a personnel issue would cause the town or person to suffer a substantial disadvantage. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
David, aye.
Jeff, aye.
Bart, aye.
And Jay, aye.
I would further move that we enter into executive session to discuss personnel issue under the provisions of 1 VSA 313A3 and invite town manager Josh Arneson into the executive session.
This is David. I'll second.
Motion from Bart, second from David to move into executive session, discuss a personnel issue and to invite town manager Josh Arneson into the session. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
David, aye.
Jeff, aye.
Bart, aye.
And Jay, aye. So first, who went to the usual discussion with Aaron?
Yeah, Duncan and MMC TV. I think you guys are good to go.
Good night.
What do we need to do to get out of this?
I entertain a motion to adjourn. Bard moved and made motion to adjourn. Jeff seconded. Let's just say that.
Aye.
Please state your name and your vote.
David.
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thanks. Everybody have a pleasant night. I'll see you in a.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.